Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi.
I am joined by Laura Hope.
Surprise.
And this is a very special podcast episode, actually.
Very excited.
And it's basically the fan-based questions for the show. It's a mixture, actually, of people who former guests and people who are just random fans of the show. And they sent in their questions.
It's very exciting.
And I obviously have Laura to help me traverse some of those questions.
I might be a dead weight on some of them, but we'll see.
Yeah, because obviously there's going to be some MMA questions.
Yeah.
And you've been schooling yourself up on some of the questions.
On a very tiny aspect of one of the questions, I figured.
Because it wouldn't be right to me just like bring these questions up and not give you a little head start with some of them.
It's true. But I figure also you can pretty much have your opinion and then I can ask you questions. I can be the man on the street, so to say. man on the street, except I'm a lady in a house.
You mean the person on the
person
street.
on the place.
You just cisgendered white woman. What are you like?
I was reading this thing the other day and it was about sort of gender swapping, sort of common headlines about sort of gender related issues, and one of them was
nothing sexual
from a guy saying that he wasn't too concerned about gendering things like postman or postwoman or whatever that, and they referred to him as a male firewoman, I think, which was great.
That is a very confusing.
I know.
Just cut it out. Just say
exactly. I think they were pointing how ridiculous it is, but
I'm sure we'll cover some of that tonight. There's some really good questions actually. We both went over them and great response from everyone that are fans and former guests of the show that brought these questions up, and
yeah,
I'm sure it's going to be some fun.
Yeah, I think we're covering the ridiculous to the sublime here. So
well, we should probably start with your questions that you received from the most awesome woman in all of Canada.
Yes.
Which is Justin Bieber. He sent in a message and we received it. So we shall... Nah, I'm kidding.
My mom could definitely beat up Justin Bieber, first of all.
Hell yeah. She's been going to the gym.
Yeah, she has. And she's doing like weight training and yeah. She's going to arm wrestle you.
This is what's amazing about your mom. For people that don't know, how old is she? Like, but you never give
I don't know if I want to
okay.
dox my mom. But she looks super young for her age.
Okay. And she's been going to the gym. And she has a personal trainer. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does like fight choreography, apparently. Yeah.
Sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so there are a few sort of longer form questions from the Swiss Family Hope, as you call them. But we've got a warm up round if we want.
Oops, sorry guys. Just following my own podcast.
It's working. This is weird. It's tiny me.
Okay, we're all set. Just making sure it's streaming on YouTube. Oh yeah, we're for the first time ever we're streaming on Facebook, and I think it's working properly for anyone listening. And yeah, so. Which
is fun because I think one of our later questions relates to whether Facebook is evil, basically. So.
Wait a minute, it's not evil? How could you even question that?
Exactly.
Okay, so. Bring
so
forward
this
question.
The Proust questionnaire style, sort of short questions. So these are things like, there's a longer history, but you see them in the back of like Vanity Fair magazines, and they'll ask like Angelica Houston them, and it's always things like, what is your greatest regret, and stuff like that, and they're just short, like a few word answers. Okay. So we've got a few.
So this is from your mom?
Yes.
I had to say it like that.
My mom.
Your mom.
My mom.
Your mom. Or Justin Bieber.
Because they're way more badass than Justin Bieber. So our first one is, who is your favorite hero/heroine in film, or hero person, as we like to call them?
I knew this was coming.
It's because I showed you.
But it obviously all of these questions are sort of subjective.
Yeah.
You know, you could interpret them in a billion ways, but I guess we could just take them like face up and just answer how we think. And
a wee addendum here, it's also in a film or in a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a comic, could we stretch it as far as that?
In media.
Okay. not in the movies, but in the comics, Spider-Man and Wolverine were always like they couldn't be like polar opposites as well.
That's true, actually. Yeah, you are somewhere in between Spider-Man and Wolverine. There's some sort of sliding scale there.
I was always fascinated by Spider-Man when I was younger because, you know, when you're a teenager, you can connect with them slightly better as a teenager as opposed to Wolverine, who's like this really badass midget.
Yeah, and he seems like super old when you're young, and when you think anybody over 20 is like,
and he's trying
basically
to
dead.
Bang broads, and when you're a teenager, you're like, what's that
Girls
like?
have cooties.
So Spider-Man, Wolverine for sort of comics, I guess that falls under books or the jazz mags.
Literature.
In movies, that's a hard one for me.
Yeah. It can be. We can say that was an or and not an and if you want.
No, I want to answer this. If
cool.
you go with your book one, and I'll think of the.
Oh man, see, I should have thought of this in advance, but I'm having
Come on. You're under pressure now.
I know.
You only have a minute to answer.
A minute. Well, okay. So this is going back to my little personhood as well. But when I was a kiddo, I read a couple of books by a guy named Garth Nix, and there's one in the bedroom right now. It's the one I'm rereading, and it's basically they're stories featuring girls who happen to be, you know, smart but somewhat introverted teenage brunettes. Okay. So obviously that was appealing to me. And they're,
for people that are listening, Laura is a brunette, and she is somewhat
one time I was a teenager.
Yes. A long time ago is the start of Star Wars. Says.
In a galaxy far, far away. And I was even more introverted when I was that age. But they're very so there's sort of two characters who are dealt with in the books, and one's name is Sabriel and one's name is Lorraine. Sabriel. They're like made up. There's like an old kingdom which is sort of somewhat medieval, but magic is real, and there's a new kingdom which is maybe sort of 1920s kind of. And the way the magic works in the books is really good. Like, they're still really, to me, rereadable as an adult. Yeah. And all the magic is basically, this is sounding really cute so far, but all the magic is necromancy. It's all about like raising the dead.
Yeah. So basically it's a series for smart brunettes who are teenagers and very broody, not broody, like brooding. Brooding,
yes. But it's not too dark. Like, it's kind of, the tone is quite like, I think in 1920s, it's not like histrionic, and it's not, Lorelle's pretty emo, but Sabriel just kind of gets on with things. Okay. So Sabriel, I'm going to say, is my fave.
I feel that's an amalgamation between two words, Sabriel, like Gabriel and Sabrina, maybe?
Yeah, all the names are kind of like familiar, but not. It's like, well, the same as the game Bobs and Dugnut.
Bobs and Dugnut.
It's sort of like the Game of Thrones names, like how they're just about familiar, but they're not quite. Some of them are John, so they're quite familiar, but you know, no H. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So that one.
Movie, like, this is a tough one for me. Yeah, like my favorite character in, I don't know. That is a tough one. I think I'm going to have to go with the one that sort of sparked it all for me in terms of looking at movies and interpreting them in different ways, and it's probably going to be Tyler Durden. You know, I think it's just a fantastic creation, and it speaks to so many people on such a level, you know, male to female or whatever you identify as, helicopter. It does. Everyone can take something from that movie itself, but the character Tyler is just he's so destructive, you know, and he wants to bring down all these corporations, and it appealed to me at that age because, you know, I'm against the man.
Yeah, you're damn the man. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Cool. But can I say that without having to say his alter ego?
Yeah, that's a weird one. Can your favorite character be one half
Spoiler
of someone's
alert.
alter ego? Yeah. If you haven't seen Fight Club, just go see Fight Club. Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, are they one and the same, or are they two different separate characters? It feels like they're separate.
Yeah, I think for all
intents
and purposes.
Yes.
For all intents if purposes. Yeah.
Okay. You got another question there from your mum? Or is it me, back to me?
No, I've got a couple here. What quality in another person do you most admire?
I think the one, it's not even in real people that I see from day to day. It's probably in movie characters. It's always people who are sort of silent and get on with the job and sort of don't show much emotion.
Yeah.
And are sort of stoic, typical hero character. I think one of the ones that shows that the most for me is 13th Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the main Viking in that, but you don't really see much of him, and he doesn't talk that much, and they keep like an air of mystery about him, even though he's like the head Viking. And those sort of characters, you don't really see it much in day-to-day life, but I think everyone aspires to that, and that's that kind of quality, the warrior mentality.
It's interesting because in some ways those are like the opposite of charismatics, but they have their own magnetism. It's just they're like doing rather than showing and telling.
For real people, they'd be psychopaths probably.
Yeah, maybe.
Consider.
I feel like they're too focused to be psychopaths, like proper psychopaths. Okay. Yeah.
What about yourself?
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
I always, and I think because it's something I struggle with in myself, I always really admire people who have. Are we good? Okay. Sort of, and maybe this is like a modern personality type. It's sort of the opposite of yours. It wouldn't have worked back in the fighting over bones days. But people who have a kind of generosity of spirit, and that they're not worried about sort of like losing time or energy to other people.
Okay.
That they just kind of like embrace different types of people and don't stress about sort of getting back to their own business.
Right.
So
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I've had a few friends and people in my life who are like that, and it's like it's not that they're naive. It's just that they know all of that and they're willing to give it a try every time anyway.
Yeah.
I really admire that.
True. Would you say that's mostly male or female quality?
Female. I've encountered it most among women. Definitely. Well, it's probably because I grew up knowing more women as well. Okay. But I don't think it's inherently male or female. But yeah. Yeah.
That answers that.
And then we've got one more. I think this one's going to be hard for us. What is your most treasured possession? Oh. Because I'm not really a things person.
We're not really like, I don't keep things because I've moved around a lot.
Yeah.
I've tend to just shed all my stuff every 3 or 4 years, so I don't have anything really. Probably the only thing I do have is a trophy I won when I was in America playing football for my high school team, and I won the Player of the Month. And it's a trophy that I've kept wherever I've went, because it was just the combination of just having a great time over there and enjoying it as much as I did, and all the work I put. It was one of the first symbols I got that all the work you put in can, even though it's just a wooden trophy, McDonald's like Player of the Month.
Yeah.
But still, it was like, oh, hard work does pay off.
It's cool. It's probably more about the memory and the lesson than it is about the actual object. Like it could kind of be anything. It's more what's in it.
Could have been a toaster,
Yeah, or shoe.
Actually, I could have done with a toaster.
Yeah.
Can I exchange this?
No, that's cool. That's interesting. Yeah.
What about you?
I think it's hard to pick just one, but the possessions I've always had the biggest feelings about giving up have always been books.
Right.
And again, I've moved around a lot as well, and there are certain books where you look at them and it's not really about the edition of the book, it's just about the text. And so if you sell that one or donate it or something, you can get another one. Yeah. But there are other ones where it's like, that's the copy I've had with me at specific times and I don't want to give them up. And I've done that. I've had to do that in the past when I've moved. And I do still think about like, oh, I used to have that book in 2010. No, I don't have it anymore. And I'm still looking for like the right one to replace it with. So a weird consequence of that is probably the last couple moves I've really not bought many books because I find it so hard to give them up. So I'm just kind of whittled my collection down to the stuff that's important to me. Like, when you're in my folks' house and the house where I grew up in Toronto, it's like made of books. Whereas here, I'm sort of like, I really haven't bought many books.
There was an old movie with Macaulay Culkin. Oh, was it The Wishmaster or something like that? And it's
The Wishmaster?
I can't remember. It's basically, I think it was after Home Alone. Let me just get this.
Yeah.
And he's in a library and he gets transported into like the book realm. It's kind of like Never-Ending Story slightly.
Cool.
But that's there was loads of books strewn around the library, like a library has, but in the way that your house has. It's like they're just like 3 or 4 piled on a coffee table somewhere.
Yeah.
And you go like through to the next room and there's like 3 or 4 piles everywhere.
Yeah. And we communicate to each other in book piles. It's like I leave things out for them to read and they leave things out for me to read, except for, of course, I'm only home, a couple weeks a year. So the piles just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we have sort of like, part of it's out of necessity because there isn't room on shelves anymore. So they've just, the shelves have sort of bled into different piles and islands and
Book. Oh, when people Google it, they say book movie.
Book movie.
The Page Master.
Page Master.
1994. So that was like 2 years after, I think. Yeah.
After Never-Ending Story?
So he basically goes and...
Home Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
So he hadn't gotten on the heroin yet, presumably.
Well, so Macaulay Culkin is frightened and he's a little geek and he gets forced into a library.
I know.
He gets frightened by a storm, so he takes shelter in a library and the librarian sort of takes him on an adventure through books and he's in the books and it's really, it was actually a good movie.
That sounds really, I'd like that. That sounds cool.
But part of it's animated as well.
Ooh, weird.
Yeah.
That's always really trippy. I always like that.
And if you watch it, folks, apologies if it is terrible. at the time.
You heard it here first.
It was really good.
Cool. Sweet.
Is that the rest
those
of the
are those are that's our warm-up round.
Okay. Yeah. Well, your mum actually, or your mom sent a few more.
My mom. Yes.
Or both your parents actually.
Yes.
Your mum specifically said this: if you could pick a country beside Canada and Scotland to live, what would you pick, and individually or as a couple, and why?
So this is the first of a series of questions that I think my parents have sent to try and break us up. No, not really.
I like the addition
you're gonna be like, Tahiti.
Individually.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to Las Vegas.
That's not a country.
No, we know it is.
It is actually, yeah, totally. And as we figured out yesterday, which I didn't know, but you did know, it like the gambling laws in America aren't like federal or state. It's like city by city, which is super weird. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
But
so they have little city states of gambling basically, and Las Vegas is one of them.
So I'll add, you want to start on this one? So which country to live in beside Canada and Scotland, and why?
So
let's just say it.
My pick is Iceland.
Okay.
I'm super like it's a very small country, not a lot of people there, so they've got some room.
Not as much ice as you'd expect.
Exactly. The climate's actually pretty okay. Full disclosure, I've only been there for about 2 days and then 1 flight layover, but my initial, this is a totally emotional response, was I would move here in a minute.
Yeah.
It's expensive. It's really expensive. That's probably the biggest problem, and it is small. I feel like I'd go a bit nuts eventually. But I think the quality of life is really good. I think the people value kind of independence. It's a really supportive environment for arts and culture. Their social kind of safety net seems really good. But it's not all super serious. They like to party. There's good food.
Yeah.
I think, it is an island and it's quite remote, and I think that would probably get to me eventually.
Yeah.
But I could definitely imagine like a sabbatical. Yeah.
It's like a giant seasonal island.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Season mark.
And also the seasons are daytime and nighttime. It's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good choice actually. I didn't think about that one. Mine goes way back to my childhood. But I've always wanted to live in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
There's been like pockets of my life throughout my 30 years on this earth that I've seriously considered that I was going to go there at some point. When I was younger, I was enticed by the samurai and I loved all that stuff. When I got older, it was just I started to love travel, and the culture appealed to me, and the food as well. I'd read a book called Angry White Pajamas.
Yes, and
it's about
a
guy who moves to Japan to study Aikido under a black belt, and Aikido is like a sort of, it's not that great a martial art, but it's still very Japanese discipline. So there's a whole system like to work your way up. It's typical samurai kind of mentality where you have to pay your dues and and you have to like scrub the floors for like 5 years before you can even put a gi on or something.
Yeah.
But he's an American guy. He's a very good writer actually.
He is. I really enjoyed it. It's really good.
And he just wrote about staying in this place, an apartment, and not being able to speak the language that well, and just individual characters in his dojo that he didn't get on with, and then ones he did, and people that he kind of thought he made a breakthrough with. And it's very good writing, and he gives you a sort of in-depth look into the culture over there, and that was what really kind of boosted me at that time as well.
Yeah, it's not romanticized, which I think is it, and I think it's pretty honest about it. And to me, the hesitancy, like I also for a very long time have loved as an outsider, Japanese culture, food, art, just sort of lifestyle, design. But at the same time, socially, it's pretty opaque to me. Like I know some Japanese Canadians. I know that Japan isn't the most welcoming place to outsiders in a sort of deep sense, but superficially, I think it can be very welcoming. Yeah. But I think also hard-won things are valuable as well. So.
It feels like if you make friends, you've earned it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's it. But I think it could be very
I think it's
lonely as well, potentially.
I think because I have had a martial arts background, that's something that appeals to me, like making your way up through something. Yeah. And it feels like Japan's just a giant version of that.
Yeah. And I am more drawn to, and this sounds weird, but like slightly more formal, like societies in terms of I like the idea of like not using someone's first name until I'm invited to and stuff, like because you know where you are with that. I don't know, I like that sort of like reserve but like a relaxed, like I like the sort of German reserve where it's like relaxed but still reserved. It works for me, where they're like, you don't use people's first names yet, but they're all totally comfortable being naked together. It's like, yeah, I get this is cool, this works for me.
That was the last of your mother's questions. I think we got a few from your dad, which
we did.
Are definitely
they're gonna get deeper
to try and break us up.
Yeah.
Blade Runner or Star Wars as a question. Obviously, the two movies, the seminal ones for anyone that's a sci-fi fan or a futuristic sort of techno fan of movies.
And this is why I think this is the trying to break us up question. Is for me, this one's a no-brainer, but I don't think it is for you. Which is for me, Blade Runner, 100% all in. Yeah. I like Star Wars, but I didn't grow up being super obsessed with it. To me, it's like a space opera. That's never the kind of thing I'm as drawn to. I
love both. It's hard to compare them. Like these are like that's a divisive question.
Yeah, and I think again they're two opposite ends of a sci-fi scale, where you get the space opera, then you get the super noir kind of thrillery.
I think the way when I first saw this question, I sort of tried to format in my head a way that I could get an answer out of it, because it's like I love them so dearly, but they are very different. But for me, if I had Blade Runner in my life and Star Wars didn't exist, would I be happy? Or would if I reversed it, like would I rather have Star Wars in my life and Blade Runner not to exist? Like, I'd go with Blade Runner all the way, because it had such an impact on me,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to kind of break that down. To me, I was looking at it in terms of what is this really about? And for me, Blade Runner at its core is about what does it mean to be human? Yeah. Whereas Star Wars is about, like, I guess kind of heroism, basically, but it's more archetypal. It's harder to really relate to yourself, I think, outside of like little kid, like primary color emotions.
Blade Runner is like the sort of humanity questioning itself and where we're headed, but Star Wars is just like a massive, like you say, an opera, like in space. It's just for relief,
it's exactly, it's entertainment. Whereas, so maybe you wouldn't want to watch Blade Runner every day because you'd go nuts. Like, it's not going to relax you.
Who said that? Get off this podcast right now.
But like, you need Star Wars for Saturdays or whatever, so you can like chill out.
Not including the prequels, but we'll let that go.
Oh God. And it's funny because I obviously watched Star Wars growing up, but I wasn't like a Star Wars kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your dad also went and asked, is Terminator the movie more relevant to us now, to our world?
Yeah, I think he sort of thought more about the question he was asking, and he added a few things on.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a part 2 to that one, is there?
I'm not sure.
The
Do you
like
have it there?
Facebook thing?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have that down?
I think he was just relating it to sort of mega corporations that mimic Skynet in a way, or the company that made Skynet.
Okay, yeah. So he said, re Blade Runner or Star Wars, is Terminator more relevant to our world? Just asking. Cyberdyne Systems, which autocorrect was not happy about. Skynet, Facebook, or are we just talking entertainment here?
The thing is, though, is Terminator trying to be prophetic? No, because there are mega corporations that existed around that time. I think it's just copying what was around as opposed to trying to be like prophetic. You know, like people are taking it as, oh, this is what happened. You know, we were getting this mega company now that's coming and just being Skynet. But I think it was just a sign of the times, you know.
It's so hard because I think this is something you can really apply to Blade Runner as well in terms of, is it trying to be prophetic or does life imitate art? Because I think you look at like fashion and advertising, for instance, and it all, like so much of it comes back to Blade Runner.
Yeah. But where would they get in that? You know, nothing comes from nowhere.
Yeah,
Sometimes
exactly.
There's a movie that takes a giant leap.
Yeah.
But it does have roots in something.
Yeah. And I mean, you could probably sort of apply that to Terminator as well. Yeah. Like they weren't doing this before this kind of thing had been thought of.
Yeah.
I think, again, I was looking at it through the lens of what's Blade Runner about and what's Terminator about. And I think the more resounding question is always going to be, what does it mean to be human? And I think the Blade Runner sequel that came out recently, and that to me deals with sort of, especially like where in a sort of digital society does like memory and personhood reside.
Yeah.
Like, is it in our files or is it in ourselves?
Yeah.
And that to me, it might not be as much of a kind of relating to headlines now. Like you think of Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and relating that to like Skynet. But I think just in terms of the bigger story of just being people on planet Earth, I still think Blade Runner is more relevant, even though it's not like technology right now is taking us towards like replicants. I think what it's going to take us towards in the near future is to do with our genetics, and does playing with those change what it means to be human? Like as we get into kind of being more enhanced.
I don't think it's going to be an us and them situation in the future, though.
No.
Like in Terminator, it's the machines against the humans.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be merged together. So it's going to be hard to distinguish those lines. I don't think there's going to be an all-out war between the two.
No, and I think even within ourselves, it's not just going to be a question of relying on AI. I think it's going to be hard even to break it down in our bodies, especially as we get into, and this is going to tie into actually another question we have coming up, the cryogenics one. But once we get into sort of like
spoiler alert,
like nanotechnology and like medical nanotech, it's gonna start getting really fuzzy.
Your nana's technology.
Yes, my nana's technology. The wheel. So I'd say maybe I think Terminator, it was more of its time. Yeah. And now I think things are getting more complicated, even though the idea of a Skynet is easy to kind of relate to when you're dealing with things like Cambridge Analytica and the way our data is used.
And there's so many movies out there. One movie's going to be very close to something that happened throughout history.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the way these things lie. You know, there's a bunch of other movies that probably didn't predict that or were close to it that didn't fall into that. And it'll happen time and time again. There's so much media going around now.
Yeah.
So someone's going to be seen as sort of prophetic in a way. Pathetic.
Well, I was thinking when we were talking, because like my sort of second runner-up or whatever answer for a lot of these questions are to do with William Gibson books, and he's somebody who used to write science fiction and now he just writes literature because now caught up with his science fiction, he no longer has to invent the stuff he's writing about. It's all actually happening.
You think he'd keep ahead of the curve somehow?
Oh, he's on the curve now. The curve caught up with him.
Is he still writing?
Yeah, he is. He's writing.
Then you think he would have progressed?
But I think the ideas, I mean it as a compliment, like the ideas that he was interested in, I think a lot of stuff came to fruition because it was stuff he'd already thought of, basically. Right. And so now, and it's all, character driven stuff. It's just he doesn't have to make up stories now. He can use, bits of technology that already exist.
Okay, so this kind of ties into this. That I think that was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you to the Swiss
Thank
Family
you.
Robinson for Hope for asking those questions. Former guest Dane Dixon. He asks. This ties into this actually. He's talking about shitty reboots of franchise movies or TV series and the need for male-female roles to be reversed due to the PC-ness of the world that's gone crazy, and the need for reboots. Like, what are our thoughts on that?
So I feel that it's not crazy PC-ness. I think that it's people trying to cash in on PC-ness. I think it's absolutely all totally just lizard brain capitalism. I don't think any of the sort of gender reversal stuff, which I've seen a bit of, not like a ton of, compared to the number of shitty reboots.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the sort of the ones that he's probably talking about?
I watched the Ghostbusters one. The only ones I can think of off the top of my head are Ghostbusters and Oceans, whatever.
And that's not out yet, I guess.
No, it's not. And I didn't like any of the other ones, so I'm probably not going to watch that one. Ghostbusters, I think I watched on an airplane.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
But you must be suspicious when it comes at a time where there is so much upset in the world at the moment when it comes to those sorts of things, that all of a sudden we're having these like reboots and swapping of gender roles.
And again, I think there's so many more shitty reboots than there are ones with the gender roles messed with. I think that one, at least, like, it was a good cast. I found it funny.
What, the Ghostbusters one?
Yeah. I liked the cast. Yeah. Like, I don't think it was necessary. I thought it was funny how pissed off people were about it in terms of the gender aspect of it. Like, be annoyed they're ruining your childhood favorite. Don't be annoyed they're ruining it with girls. Yeah. Like, calm down.
I've seen a few people posting about it and the reaction to it, and they were sort of like you say, trying to be transgressive and all that. And they were posting stuff like, oh, you know, why is like why are you complaining about a movie from the 80s, you know, and this reboot, and when it's women, that's when you take a stance against it. Like, they were saying that the only reason people were pissed off were because it's women.
But and a lot of the comments
like
suggested
you say,
that.
Like, it's about I think it was more about just tarnishing the legacy of that movie, and the second one as well, I guess. I think if they'd released a third one with men, I still wouldn't go. Like, I wouldn't have been happy either to go watch that.
Just would have been yet another money-grabbing reboot. And I think
Ghostbusters was made in a time, like I've said this about a bunch of movies from that era, especially the 80s. They had a bunch of good first movies and just as good sequels that were slightly different. The Ghostbusters was one of them. Terminator and Predator as well.
They had like slightly, like, the tone of the sequels was different, but they were still really successful. Like Alien and Aliens as well as,
So, like, I don't want to see any more Predator movies. I don't want, like, it's nothing to do with...
Joke's on you, because there's another one coming out.
But it's nothing to do with, like, putting women in the roles of what were traditionally men in the old movies. It's, well, to me personally, I know there will be people that are pissed off because it is women. That's just the way the world runs, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was predominantly that. I think it was just nostalgia. It was like, it felt like someone was punching your nostalgia in the face.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I don't really
we've seen the same with Star Wars.
And to me, I don't get that level of outrage either, because it's like, just don't see it. Like, don't give them your money. It's fine.
But it still exists. You know, it's something that you can't take back once it's made.
Yeah, but I don't have time to be upset about all the movies that exist, you know?
And if you're like a super nerd, then there's things to take into consideration that becomes part of canon. If it's
That's true, actually, if you're like a diehard. Yeah.
And that's something that you probably won't want to take.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think if it was all actually about like people flexing their PC muscles or wokeness or whatever, they'd be able to trust women to carry some goddamn original films as opposed to trying to shoehorn them into men's roles. I think that's silly. And I think it's just somebody seeing...
Yeah, it blatantly looks silly when it's, like you're saying, when they're just trying to shoehorn them in.
Yeah. And I think it is just people trying to... It's the same as like selling little girls t-shirts that say girl power on them. It's just capitalism. It's not feminism or whatever. So, yeah.
It's probably the little sweatshop girl that made that
exactly.
Well. Give them power.
It's funny, but it's true. Yeah.
Cheers, Dane, for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, what have we got here? Mr. Greg Hobbs asks, where do you get your playful kick while bowling?
I was wondering that myself.
This is a very specific question. Laura and I went bowling the other night, bumped into some old friends from Dundee, and we were playing our respective games of bowling because we ended up there at different times. And Laura and I were enjoying our game, and I just want to give props to Ailey, my friend Ailey, because she was just kicking Greg's ass at this, and obviously he was looking over at me while I was bowling because I was kicking your ass.
Oh, she was kicking his ass way more significantly than you're kicking my ass.
If we were all playing together, she would have kicked all of our asses.
Oh, very, very, very significantly. Yeah. Oh my God. No, she was a beast. It was amazing.
And when I get into bowling, I've not done it in years, but it's quite. If you know how to move with your body mechanics, you fall into things quite naturally. And I mean, like, just goes across like a bowler would.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Where do you get that playful kick from?"
Very dainty.
So he messaged me and replied to my call out for questions and asked me this.
So is it just natural physicality?
Yeah. Like if you've done any sort of martial art or anything that involves movement, it's just to sort of counter what you're doing with your hand when you're throwing a ball. It just your body moves that way anyway.
It's very adorable. I like it.
Okay,
I'm
that's
just always
not
trying
what I was trying to do.
I'm always just trying to remember not to run screaming down the lane and tackle the rest of the pins. So
just start chewing on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I've not played it in a while. It's a fun game.
Fun.
Yeah. I can see how seriously pissed off some people get though. I was watching a couple where and the girl, they must have been on like a third or fourth date. He was like trying to like have a good time with this girl, and she was like doing terribly at it.
Yeah.
And he was trying not to laugh when she turned down because her face was like thunder.
She was so mad.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
And eventually when he laughed, because he couldn't hold it in anymore, it wasn't because she was doing terrible, it was because how she was reacting.
Exactly.
She slapped him.
Yeah.
Like,
which I missed. I was sad.
I know, and I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell? And he was like, he said, do you want to use the little kids thing?
Oh yeah, and like the bumpers.
Yeah, and she was like raging even more.
Yeah, she was not having a good time. And the funny thing is, he never would have laughed at her if she just sucked at it. It's just because she was acting like she was going to murder someone.
Yeah, that always is something that you find growing up. Like if you just don't act up to things, then people won't, sense anything.
Exactly.
That was something that you instantaneously learn from. If you encounter bullies or anything in school, just don't react to it. The minute you react is when you show weakness. Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But in nature, that's when they'll start pouncing.
Well, even as a winner as well, like because I'm always like I'm pretty competitive, but to me,
are you saying you're a winner?
I hope to be. That's the competitiveness. But to me, you can only really win by being chill. Like you don't want to be the person who's freaking out about whatever it is the most. That's never a good look. So whether you're winning or you're losing, just keep it together.
Yeah. There you go, kids. Just stop acting up.
They were kids. They were like 20 probably as well.
Okay, so we're going to Danny McCardle. He messaged me on Instagram and asked, favorite fight scene in any movie and why?
Oh man.
I'll let you go for this one.
Oh man, I meant to think about this more and then I had a hard time.
That is a tough one because there's just so many fight movies out there. But it doesn't even have to be in a movie where it's a martial art movie. It can be any fight scene, I guess.
I'll do an old one and a new one.
Okay.
So the old one for me is like every scene in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
I'd never seen a movie like that. I saw it in cinema when it came out. And it was like the mix of the very stylized fighting and then the magic of it. Like it fit the tone of the movie so well. I don't know anything about anything that's in it, how like real, like I guess there's not a burden on it to be real because they're also like flying, so it's fine. I just love the delight of it and how
wait a minute, people in old China didn't fly on tops of chimneys.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. I'm sorry.
Shit.
I think my favorite one in that is toward the end and they're in that forest and they're sort of
the
like
bamboo. It's the wind as well, like you just hear the actual sounds of nature as opposed to like
exactly. Yeah, it's the wind.
There's a bear in the woods, by the way.
It's a panda bear, that's what it's fun. Because of them sort of leaping from tree to tree and that there are these natural pauses when they're kind of separated by where they are, which I think is really interesting for the tension in that scene. Yeah, so that's probably one of my favorites. My other more recent one is the fight near to the beginning of Captain America, the Winter Soldier with Captain America and Georges St. Pierre. Yep. And I've never seen like an actual MMA guy in a good film before. So to have like the really good choreography.
Yeah.
And then I love the kicking. Like it's
Yeah.
just, I sound like such a girl now, but I've never seen a fight choreographed that way in like a film, and it was just brilliant. I loved it.
Do you know what? I've been watching all the Captain Americas. The fight choreography is insane.
It's so, and all the
action
like the close
sequences are
combat
brilliant.
in them is so good. I
Brilliant.
just love all
and
that.
you wouldn't expect it. Like we talked about this slightly before in terms of the Captain America movies getting more dark as they progress, because he's dealing with being an old morality in a sort of really sort of morally skewered world.
Yeah.
And he becomes more sort of hardline, I guess. He becomes more shaded, but he becomes more hard on certain things.
And he grows a beard.
Of course. But some of the fighting in some of those movies is just great. The one where I think it was maybe the first Avengers, I'm not sure, but there's a bomb. One of the aliens explodes and he's in the room and he jumps up and hides behind his shield, and the bomb blows him out the window and he's like behind his shield, like a tiny little. It's amazing because like when you have a tiny little shield, you're only going to be able to stand behind a tiny part of it.
So you gotta.
Your legs will get blown off.
Yeah.
So he curls up into the shield as he jumps in the air.
It's really smart, and I like smart in terms of, for me in those films, the different characters have different styles that are logical based on like their background, but it's not like that's just there for like fight nerds. It's like I can see it, like, and I'm paying attention, but I don't know anything. And it's sort of like they have themes, and they have certain, like Natasha is always doing certain things, and it's just, it suits the characters, and I just think it's really smart. It's good.
For me, a slightly older one.
Yes, you are slightly older than me.
Whatever. I think I can't specifically say one movie, but maybe most of Jet Li's early work, and it's a lot of the wire work. There's one, I can't remember the name of the movie, but he does it on a wooden frame, and it's all these guys fighting together trying to beat him up, and they're on this wooden frame in a town square in China. It's like it's set in like the sort of rural old China, you know, like around the sort of the samurai period in Japan. It was like the Chinese version of that, I guess. Obviously
classical China.
That's it. And I think one of my favorite ones that always sticks out for me is Troy. It's the fight between Achilles and the Hector. That is an amazing fight scene.
That's true.
Just the kind of, they have like just a little drum, like a hand drum that they get someone's playing for the music, and it's very, it's just like an amazing build up, because these two, he's an amazing warrior. Achilles, he's like undefeated, but you also love Hector's his character, because he's a good guy. He's one of the,
such a moral. He's one of the most moral characters in that film,
and you don't want any of them to die, and you know. Because you know history, you know Achilles is not going to die at that point. So.
And you know also that Hector's death isn't good. Like, if you remember from, hearing the story or reading it or whatever, that it's not just he dies, that it gets real bad, basically. So it is that, it's almost like it's like a nightmare. You're like, I want to be out of this. I don't want this to happen. But it's also so good. Like, it's so compelling.
And I've always tried to explain this to people that have asked me this before about Troy and Brad Pitt as Achilles. The way what they've done with his character and the way he fights, I always equate it to wrestling. In wrestling, if you're a character, you have a special move that you're known for, and it's something that you do during a fight, and everyone knows it's coming. Sometimes it's your finisher, so you can it's a super powerful move, and they kind of, because of the name around Achilles, he's almost like a superhero. Like, everyone knows of him. He's like amazing, just undefeated up until one point, obviously, which he's named after.
That one literal point,
But there's a few moves he does in that over and over again. It's like they're trying to make him a sort of like an MMA fighter with a special move, And he does it in battle, and it's brilliant. It's a good movie. And that's a great fight scene.
That's a film when it came out, because I was like a super classical civilization nerd, and I was like, this is going to be so wrong and so terrible and so Hollywood, but it's really good. Like, it's, it's a Hollywood film, but it's true to itself as well. I like it a lot. Good casting.
Definitely.
Especially Orlando Bloom playing a vapid pretty boy, because he's a vapid pretty boy. So
I think we all would just wanted him to die in that movie after after the years of having to put up with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to go to the bathroom and then we'll get into the next question.
Cool.
I know.
Do you need a beer refill?
Yes.
Cool.
2 seconds, people. And I'm back.
Hi.
Just like magic. If you're listening on the podcast, that was instantaneous.
Yeah, it's a very, very weird superpower that he has.
I'm a time traveler, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question comes from John from the Martial Arts Podcast, which I've been on a few times, actually.
Yes.
And he sent this on Twitter. And he asks, now, I should have done a competition to give a free T-shirt to whoever had the best question, because I think John would have won it. So John, big shout out to you for this question. He asks, "Is Roseanne only racist on Ambien?"
I can say from the ridiculous to the sublime. I don't know which end that is, but
well, if anyone's not heard what's happening, if you've been living on Mars or Venus, depending what
whichever
gender you are.
Mercury.
No, because guys, sperm can't get above a certain temperature, or you can't mate.
Oh, that explains why people don't live on Mercury.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Women can, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we can do anything.
The
so.
devil. It can survive high temperatures.
And low ones. Ooh.
Yeah, obviously it's in correlation to Roseanne Barr. Of Roseanne fame, actually. She had her own TV show. She was a comedian for a long comedian when it was still called a comedian. She had her own show for how many years was that running?
Too many. Many years.
And it was critically acclaimed, and she was acclaimed as a sort of person and her no nonsense attitude, and just saying how she sees things. And that has obviously not stood her in good stead into her old age, because she tweeted on Twitter, obviously, as you do.
Thanks for clarifying.
At 2 a.m. in the morning, in relation to someone who works for Obama. I can't remember the position. She's an advisor of something.
Yeah.
I'll just make sure exactly the details of it.
I only looked at this very, very briefly because my days of not caring about Roseanne are certainly coming to a middle.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Just I want to make sure I've got this right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing some terrible things in the news about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like more than already.
Roseanne Barr. It doesn't say who she said it about.
I can't remember her name.
Obama. Okay, bear with us. Valerie Jarrett, is that her name?
That rings a bell.
Yes, it's about Valerie Jarrett, an African American woman who was a senior advisor to President Barack Obama, and she made this sort of really, Have you seen the tweet?
I did. I honestly could barely
First of all, she can be racist at any point because she's a cis woman, white woman, so she's inherently racist.
Okay.
Sorry,
Starting
that was
unnecessarily
a joke.
inflammatory.
Yeah, so she made this sort of it was a weird tweet. You know, it was a bit. If I had seen that before they'd sort of kicked any fuss up about it, I would have been like, whoa, that. But that's
it's quite. So what Barr said was Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals Valerie Jarrett.
Okay.
Which is stupid.
Yeah.
And
obviously this is like, it's a hard one to traverse because when there's an African American woman involved, I hate that term African American, just say black.
Yeah.
Involved, and you hear the words monkey involved, it's just it doesn't mesh well in your mind. You know, it doesn't. It's like I wouldn't say that to someone even if they were white or black or anything like that.
And like, okay, first of all, monkeys are cool.
Yeah.
So it should have nothing to do with anything. Even if you're not intending to be racist, you should know that some people will interpret that way and just think of something else to say. Like it's not like that was funny enough that she needed to say it that way because it's really not. So and
in turn, Roseanne got her show cancelled after it made a spectacular return, and I feel really bad for her whole castmates. You know, they all played their part in making that show.
That's a good point. Yeah, that would make me really mad. Yeah.
Even though the name is Roseanne, every single person that was on that show was all a strong part of that cast, and they are just like appalled by what she said as well. None of them are really sort of standing up for it.
Yeah.
It got like a little bit more weird as well. Like people were asking Trump to sort of comment on it, and he went on to say that the person that the guy from ABC, he went to apologize to the woman. Obviously, that's the
Valerie
the show.
Jarrett.
That's the TV production company that has Roseanne under their roster, and he personally apologized to Valerie for what had happened. And then Trump says, oh, he never apologized to me when their TV network were saying all these ridiculous things about me. He tweeted this, President Trump.
Oh my God.
He's such a child.
He is such a child.
And they're saying they're not condoning it, but, you know, there's like double standards going on, he said. He's such a child. Like, who lets the president tweet?
That's so funny. Yeah, I was reading an article the other day about basically how Trump is driving all of his staff insane because they can never tell when he's going to say stuff that's supposed to be secret. Just like, it's just a constant, just like, they never know when they're going to find something out from him as opposed to from like decisions. And,
but yeah, like, this tweet, would you consider it racist from reading it?
I couldn't say I could extrapolate from that she, you know, thinks all African American people are worse than white people, but I certainly think she's insulting Valerie Jarrett based on her race, which is racist. Yeah. So, because she doesn't have anything bad to say about her other than that.
Yeah.
So, what's her beef with her?
But Roseanne's like been going a little bit crazy over the last few years. She's really into a few conspiracy theories. And, you know, that kind of skewers my any vision that I have of her that she's a competent sort of woman who's a comedic genius. She seems to be just.
Yeah, well, like, and certainly from that tweet, like, if that was the funniest thing she could think of to say, it's not funny. Like, at the very least, you can definitely say it's not funny.
But she went on to say that she was Ambien tweeting at 2 a.m. in the morning, and that was her excuse. Yeah,
which is like, don't do that. And I think the strongest thing you could do in that case is just to own it. And if this is true, say you didn't realize how it would come off or whatever, which is, you should, but don't make an excuse like that. Because if you have... She
tweeted it. It was her fault.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, should that whole show with all its cast members and everyone that's on that team should that show be cancelled over one thing that she said?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, it certainly is unfair to everybody else who's involved in that production. I don't know. It's I think likely that there was more that went into it than that. I think maybe they were looking for an excuse to can it.
Yeah. But it was doing really well.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
They'd made a comeback because it'd been off air for years.
Yeah.
And they'd brought it back and it was going to be doing amazing.
Okay, because the general critical reception I've read was, why would they bother doing this? So,
yeah.
But again, I'm not, okay, this is another reason I have to ignore Roseanne. I'm totally fine with that. Like, I have no impression of her.
But her sort of flamboyant nature and fiery personality is something that people applauded her for when she was growing up as a comedian, you know, and she had to be tough in a male-dominated profession, and now, like, the kind of thing that she was known for, not being racist, but you know, saying things that she thinks straight out, is something that we're not condoning anymore.
Yeah, and I guess you can say things that you think straight out, and that's brilliant. If they happen to be racist, then guess what? You're a racist, basically.
But does one tweet like that make you a racist?
Well, it certainly makes you sound like a racist. I think that's...
But all the stuff that preceded that, her whole life leading up to that point, you know, she says she's done a lot for civil rights movement, you know, and that's completely erased in one tweet.
Yeah.
You know, she's never been supposedly being racist in the past.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not like...
No, I know you're sort of playing devil's advocate.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, and like I say, I don't think that means that everybody around her deserves to get fired, but again, it quacks like a duck.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the Ambien thing is just a lame excuse. It's like the Twinkie defense.
If she hadn't have said that, I probably would have got her a bit more, but she's just clearly trying to make an excuse. Yeah. So it's like, ugh.
Yeah, and if she just said, like, I see now what I said was wrong. Yeah. Sorry. That would have been pretty easy. I don't know if she was trying to be kind of funny with the Ambien thing, but yeah.
Probably not. Thanks for that, John. That led to
it was interesting. Yeah.
Okay. This is on to another former guest of the podcast, in Chris Bungard.
Awesome.
MMA fighter, and he was fighting last night, actually.
He was. We need to watch that.
In Scotland for On Top, which is a Scottish promotion company, and he was fighting for the lightweight title. Mm-hmm. And he was in the news a bit because he would have held 4 MMA lightweight Scottish titles at once, which has never been done before. Right. And last night he beat the guy he was facing by unanimous decision and made the historic 4th belt.
Congratulations to him. I don't think that's too surprising, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, he's in such a great place just now mentally, and I keep saying this, but when you meet people who are just so focused, and it's backed up by their skill, obviously, but when they're in a place where it just you can't push them over mentally. Yeah. And that's where he is just now. He's not going to get beaten in the meantime. No, cool. He messaged to talk about Michael Bisping's career, who is a former UFC fighter up until just a couple of weeks ago, where he announced his retirement after, I mean, he must have been fighting for at least 15 years, and he's had he's a British fighter as well. He's done so much for British MMA. He's one of the pioneers in terms of going over and fighting in the UFC. I think he competed on The Ultimate Fighter. You know, he did really well.
He won The Ultimate Fighter, I believe. Yeah.
And he's like the epitome of hard work. Like he was a talented fighter, but it wasn't like he had like an amazing stand-up skill set. He just had like hard work and amazing conditioning and a really good game that he stuck to, and he could implement it, and he'd just outwork anyone in that weight class, and eventually he got the title, but people sort of never took him seriously ever, and he just worked and worked and worked and worked. And I don't think there's anything that we can really say about his career that's not been said, you know, and I'm glad he's retired, and that leads me into what I wanted to talk to about Bisping, because I think this is crazy. You know, his last 4 years of his career, he fought with a detached, what's it called?
It was a detached retina.
It had a special name though. It was a something. I'll get there.
I'm not sure. So what I did.
2 seconds. I had it here.
Okay.
Vitreous detachment, which
Okay.
is not a full-on detachment.
Oh,
it's
that's
one where the
weird.
sort of like it is like the same as a detached retina, but
Yeah.
not fully. And it's just when the gel or whatever starts to pull away from the retina.
Oh, that sort of explains it, because everywhere I came across it just said detached
Yeah.
retina, but I have a teeny tiny bit of experience with that because my mom had a detached retina when
Wow.
I was a kid, but she didn't, like, it was her, vision. There wasn't anything cosmetically wrong. That you could sort of could see just as it, whereas he clearly has some issues you can see with his eye.
So the vitreous detachment is a posterior vitreous detachment is a very common eye condition. It can be caused by natural changes to the vitreous gel, which takes up the space inside the eye.
It's
Although
your eye goo.
PVD causes some frustrating symptoms, it doesn't cause pain, harm the eye, or cause permanent loss of vision.
Although
But the thing at the same time, I think they filled his eye with something.
Yeah, I
What was
heard
it?
that on one of the Joe Rogan podcasts, but I couldn't find any reference to
Yeah.
it. The main thing I have learned is that MMA journalism seems like really bad, and someone needs to go and sort it
Well,
out.
they need like some good level. There's only a few at the top, and it's just a bunch of people that call themselves amateur
and
journalists.
it was very much all very short articles where every sentence ended in an exclamation mark, and it was incredibly frustrating.
Wait a
So,
minute, did I write all those?
with random capitalized letters.
Did I tell you when I was younger, I thought when people used an exclamation mark, I thought they were like shouting all the time or angry. I remember a girlfriend at the time when I think I was in third year of high school, and she messaged me and I was like, why are you annoyed or like angry? She's like, no, it's just an exclamation. I'm exclaiming.
That's funny.
And I was like, I learned something.
Caps lock, however. That's funny.
So he
But
fought his last 4 years, I guess.
It was in 2013
Okay.
that he got smacked in the eye.
So
Yeah.
most people would have counted him out. I think he fought Vitor Belfort. He got kicked, I think, in the face, which tore part of his the gel from his retina.
Yeah.
And so he was faced with the decision either to get surgery, which means his career would have finished, or what I've heard before is where he got something injected to sort of make it to save it until until when he retires, and then wants to get it fixed. But all that time he's had like a cross eye on his right eye.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like he's got a
So that's
strabismus
testament
as well.
to how much of a badass he is. Like he's fighting with the vision loss, like mostly in one eye.
Yeah, and it's probably like a few things I read said he'd had surgeries on it, but it could have just been that procedure, and it probably needs to be repeated. I'm not sure. But it's never going to be fine. Hopefully they can help him with it. But I understand that he's going into acting more now as well.
Okay. Yeah,
and obviously it's going to be something he wants to work on. He's enough of a famous face that it's not like he's, a 20-year-old waiter in LA and that's going to make a huge difference, but I'm sure it's something.
And he has his own podcast, and he has he works for Fox. I think he does a bit of the pre-fight sort of build up as well in America though, not in the UK one.
Can they understand him? What's his accent like? The thing that I read, which was interesting, is in that fight with Belfort, he's actually, sometimes it is what it is, but he's super angry about it because that was before Belfort got
busted for well, no, he was allowed to have a medical exemption for using TRT. And then this was before Nowitzki came in and changed everything. You're not allowed to have, because if you're that much in need of it, then that can be symptoms that you've been abusing it all your life. Or you shouldn't be fighting because it's just that's the way your body's heading. And Vitor Belfort, when he was on TRT, was an absolute monster.
Beast. And now he's kind of a crumpled thingy.
So when you know someone was clearly on something, if you just look at him, then when you get a detached retina from that fight, I would be angry as well.
And Bisping refers to it as him being basically permanently disfigured by this guy, which I can certainly understand if you think that person shouldn't have been there or in that condition, and then that's what's happened to you. And it is amazing that he's been able to continue fighting. Even you'd think you just stand a bit to the right of him and just hit him. Like you'd think that would be what everyone would do.
And leading up to his retirement, he won the belt. He beat Luke Rockhold. No one on 2 weeks notice, I think it was, something like that. Yeah, he beat him on that. But he's always in condition. He's always training. He's always ready to fill in for someone.
That's cool. That's admirable.
Beat the champ. I think it was his first defense. People didn't think he should have been in there because most people have always questioned his career, because there's been points where he's lost a pivotal fight that could have got him on a title run, or and he just most of the time you'd be like, oh, he's done now, but he would always come back and make a run, and eventually last year he won the title, which was amazing, because he deserves it. He's the hardest working man in MMA at some point. And I think what led to him retiring was a fight that he took after he got beat by GSP in a super fight. And he took it like 2 weeks after he got choked, like almost knocked out and choked
crazy.
out. So yeah, I think it was Kevin Gastelum, I think it was.
So maybe. It wasn't even just 2 weeks notice from doing nothing. It was 2 weeks notice from being
semi-knocked out and choked out as well.
That's scary. That's not good.
And he got beat, obviously, pretty badly, and he was saying that his good eye was starting to give him like problems now. Like he was starting to see flashes out of that. So he was
that's scary.
That's it.
That might just be like stress as well.
And he says when he sees flashes from his damaged eye, they say that's when the sort of fibers are pulling from the retina.
That'd be so scary.
I know. And it's your eyesight, it's a huge thing. Imagine like you love a sport so much that you just continue to fight one at a disadvantage, and two could permanently disadvantage yourself.
And realistically, he is already permanently not going to have full vision in that eye, but he could completely lose vision in that eye forever kind of thing. That's intense.
He has a wife and he has like teenage kids, I think.
Wow. What age is he?
I think he's like maybe 39, I guess.
Okay.
I'll have a little look. There's going to be MMA nerds like, he's like 50.
Yeah, this is going to be, I tried to just get a few details down on this one because I knew I couldn't talk intelligently about
he is 39.
39. Yeah. Genius.
Yeah, you don't want to continue fighting when you're 40, But he's been fighting so long. He's such a great pioneer of British MMA, in terms of fighting on the bigger stage. Yeah. That's before his eye was sort of.
Yeah.
I think. An old one, September 2013 that was.
So it must have been just around that time.
You said 2000.
It was 2013, so whenever. Okay. Yeah. And my fun fact that you didn't know is that he was born in Cyprus.
But he grew up in Clitheroe, Lancashire. I can see here on Wikipedia.
I think he was born on a British base, but his family is descended from Polish nobility, and Bisping is actually a Polish name.
I thought so, because it was always like a weird one.
Yeah.
Oh, he began training in jiu-jitsu because he's always been known as a kickboxer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I read also that he started off trying to fight as a heavyweight and he dropped down.
Well, that was before he went to The Ultimate Fighter.
Okay.
He fought in the UK and he was over. There's a documentary, I think, or is it one of the UFC ones they have on him, and it's brilliant.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just seeing him making his way up, and he's in his old mum's house.
Oh.
Well, his mum's house, and it's this tiny little...
You mean he's got a new mum now?
We all have new mums. He has like a council house, and he's just like in our living room, and he's a UFC star.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's always really cool. That's so different from the sort of like Conor McGregor version where he'd be like, he'd have his yacht in his pool.
So his first fight was in 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's a heck of a career.
I know.
Yeah, because you've always had sort of 10 years is like...
That's... I think back then, like, there's a lot of people who got away with it more in their later life from that era because it wasn't... People didn't really know how to train as hard.
Right.
Because they didn't know how... Or there was no set way of training for MMA fights. So
and sports medicine and stuff, I'm sure, has come along as well.
Oh, yeah.
I understood he stopped a couple times to sort of go back to work and started again.
Yeah, like that he really didn't think he was going to go anywhere. Like he was winning fights, but his personal life was taking him on a different place. And he's just a legend, and I'm sure he's going to be entitled for being in the Hall of Fame, the UFC Hall of Fame.
That's cool.
Anyway, thanks for that, Chris, and well done on your amazing victory.
Yeah, that's really cool. Congratulations.
And well done to you, Laura, for keeping up with me on a...
Oh, thank you. I didn't want to just be here and be like, tell me more. So
batter your eyelids.
Yeah.
And show me your boobs.
Which is useless on a podcast because no one can see.
As I point at the camera. Okay, on to the next question. Okay, this is maybe... Okay. These are not in order, obviously. I'm just picking out the ones that...
They're in order of the people he likes the most, the people he likes the least. No, it's not. That would be mean.
Keeping it in the sort of MMA theme, Lewis Penny, he asked on Instagram, should knees, kicks to a downed opponent be legalized in MMA? Because anyone that's not a fan of MMA, it's currently illegal in the UFC. So when someone has their 3 points of contact down, which means your feet and your hand, I think it might have changed recently in the rules. I know it became more convoluted, but if you have your hand on the floor as well as your 2 feet or knees, or elbow and whatever, that's seen as 3 point contact. So that means you're downed and you can't be kicked to the head or kneed in the head, and that's illegal.
Yes,
but there are organisations, Pride, and there's some stuff in Brazil. Obviously, the old bare knuckle stuff through there.
Right.
That's all where they still utilise these.
Pride, the Japanese one.
Yeah. The UFC bought that over.
Okay.
It's tough because, I mean, I don't want to go too far into this because it's something that's been debated over and over again.
Okay.
And obviously it's not something that you're schooled in. But you as someone that's an outsider, what would you want to see in a fight? I mean, I think these type of things for fighters like me, I've fought Lewis, who's asked, I guess he's like trains in MMA as well. All the fighters and everyone that knows MMA that way through fighting want to see them legalized. But people who are just casual fans and the American public who just see this from the outside, that's something that they probably wouldn't want to see, because that makes, for a sport that's tried to legitimize itself for so long, if you see something that is like that looks like a street fight,
I guess so. For
the casual fan, for the person that sees it not even as a fan, just as a passerby, visually that's not something people want to see.
Yeah, I guess.
I think is a great idea because there's so much to do with technique and even headbutts. Like, I think that's a great tool to use in MMA, but it's seen as thuggish to the outsider.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because my gut reaction is like, no, people are soft, don't do that. But also realistically, you're watching a sport where the point is to hurt the other person enough that they can't fight you anymore, basically. So if you're allowed to choke people and kick them in the head when they're standing up and stuff like that, I don't really see how it's different other than the optics of it. And having seen...
And people will adapt to those rule sets. Yeah. That's just the way. They won't get caught in those positions unless they're really tired.
Yeah.
But they'll know how not. That's like, they've adapted to lots of rules in MMA.
And there are referees there as well to keep people from, wailing on people who aren't able to defend themselves. Yeah.
They have 3 referees in the cage at all times.
So it could actually be... No, they don't. That's bullshit. You can't fool me. Unless 2 of them are really small.
Well, the referees have to fight each other first to get the position of the top referee.
Awesome. Is it to the death? Sweet.
No. Don't be silly.
It could be a good opportunity for the referees to show how good they are at keeping the fighters from sort of permanently damaging each other. If we can trust them to do that when they're allowed to do everything else they're allowed to do, we should trust them to do that as well.
And it changes the game. Like, I don't think... I mean, some people are against having a cage because there's there's people that sort of take advantage of that as well. But I think whatever the rule set is, or lack of rules, people are going to adapt to it and find ways to sort of cheat the system in a way. It's just how it is. Like, if there's a line, you're able to use that to your advantage as well.
Totally. And again, the referees are there to keep an eye on stuff like that, and that's how it is. And also, if you make the other guy mad, he might kick your head off. So there's that. Be cool. It's always an interesting question with these things, especially in a sport like MMA, that seem really harsh to sort of outside viewers, but might actually be better in the long run. Like, I know you've talked before about like hand wraps and stuff like that, or like weight of gloves.
I'd like to see them not use gloves.
Yeah.
There's a whole host of reasons for that. People who are casual fans and not really fans maybe that are listening, the only reason they wear wraps and gloves is to protect their hands, you know, to stop them from breaking them.
Yeah, it's not to keep the other guys
No.
from not getting punched hard, because that's totally still, sorry guys, but that's definitely happening. Yeah, having one of the first female fights I've seen be the one between Raquel Pennington and Scary. What's her name?
Oh, bitch, Quea? No.
No.
Wait a minute. Raquel.
You'll all know the one I'm talking about, because it's the one where
I know her name as well.
Yeah.
Versus
and she was one I actually knew as
Nunes.
well. Nunes, yeah, that was
Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, and it was like, it's one I think people have been talking about a lot, because it seemed super harsh, and between it being women fighting and between, like, I've never seen a fight like that. I haven't seen that many of them, but
That the thing is, if those rule sets were implemented, the ones we're hypothetically talking about taking away and implementing in that type of fight, I think it only happens in women's fights now, because there sometimes can be a huge gap in the quality of the fighter.
Just because there are fewer women fighting? Is that okay? Yeah.
So Amanda Nunes was fighting Raquel Pennington, and I think the type of fighter that Amanda is just like head and shoulders above Raquel, and she took a lot of punishment in that fight because she just didn't want to quit. Well, she wanted to quit, but her corner were like, no, get back in there and fight. In the first few rounds I was like, she shouldn't be in there. This is just
it looked like a girl getting beaten up. It didn't look like a girl fighting.
Yeah. And if there's that gap still in some fights, then certain rules could look really, really bad for her. You know, if you could just see her on the floor getting kneed in the head, you know, that could be terrible for her.
Yeah. It's a weird one. Yeah.
But I don't think it would happen as much in the men's one, because that's had more time to sort of fill out, and the quality to sort of be like the base level has just come up so much in the last 5 years for MMA that it's hard for someone just to be totally taken advantage of like that.
Yeah. And I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast with Kat Zingano, and she knew a bit more about Raquel Pennington, and there were like some issues that had gone into her being less prepared as well. I can't remember what.
They always say this.
Yeah, I guess so.
Every single fight. I mean, there's been so many in the last year. It seems like everyone just keeps coming out with like, oh, it was my weight cut, or I was on my period.
You were?
And that's just the men's fight. That's crazy.
Thanks. That was, good save. Yeah.
I wonder what happens when that happens.
Well, this is funny,
Obviously,
but
it must be something
Kat
that comes
actually
up.
talks about it on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
She didn't really go into it in detail, but she said she always gets it the day of weigh-in.
Oh, my God.
And she's like, this is why everything sucks.
But that might make you more aggressive.
I think it just makes you, want to just go cry in a corner, but maybe. But I don't know.
You know, sad anger helps you.
Sad anger.
You know, if you're in a fight with someone, you're just going to like, okay.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, thanks,
That's
Liz, for that.
for
I don't want to dwell too much on it, because it has been talked about to death. And
I think
it basically feels like a sort of fighters, trainers who know the sport against people who haven't watched much of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to get your opinion for somebody who's intrigued about what you might think, but if it's just sort of generally falling down on those two sides, there's not a ton of room for debate, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool.
I might leave this one for last, actually.
Ooh, dessert. Oh, I have one for last though.
Oh, okay. Is this from Hugh?
Yeah, maybe that can be our amuse-bouche before dessert.
You're an amuse-bouche. Okay, Robbie Miller, former guest. He says he is most gutted about being too dead to see the future. What are your thoughts on freezing your body, i.e. cryogenics?
So the bad news is, medically at this point, it's the equivalent of having those fuzzy dice you hang from your car rearview mirror in the hopes that will bring you some sort of immunity from accidents.
So just to preface this, for people that have not heard of it, most people have heard of it through urban legend. Walt Disney was said to, when he died, was said to have been frozen and kept in the what is it, the mountain they have at where Disney place.
Is it there? I just knew the joke about him being frozen.
That's the story. But basically what we're talking about is if you have an ailment, or you just decide that, you know, finish your life
and packing it in.
And you wanna see what the future's like. You want to check it out. You want to see if people are like, there's like Batman or Superman around, or space dildos, or something as crazy as that. Aliens, or
I like that you thought of aliens after.
And you want to see what the future's like. Or you just want to wait till they figure out how to cure your disease or ailment or something like that, so you have a better quality of life. Then you get frozen cryogenically. Some places do it head down the way.
Yeah, some places do.
Do you know why they do that?
No, why?
Because if it thaws out, then it'll go down the way, I guess. No, they put it in a specific way, so when whichever way it thaws out, your head will be the last one to sort of get. If there's a break in the system, if it faults, maybe it's just the normal way then.
Because I think they have to slow down your sort of brain metabolism anyway to prevent.
I'm just saying if like there's a catastrophe or some earthquake and all the thing cuts out, so they put you in such a position where it thaws out from the top down or something, and your head's the last to get sort of unthawed if there's a mistake, so they can save you as how am I trying to word this? Like if that gives them time to try and get the power back on to then keep you frozen, so they're not just your head first unthawing, it's going to be from your feet first, I guess. Yeah,
that seems about as much like wishful thinking as the rest of the whole thing, but at the same time there's a sense to it, because the point is to slow down your sort of brain metabolism so you don't experience brain death.
But they already,
except you totally do.
They already do this medically. With some things like your body, they'll lower your temperature so that you don't do more damage to your brain if you're in a coma or something like that. They can freeze your heart, so they do this on a scale. But one of the big things when we're talking about the techniques to this, the big thing that they encounter that makes it slightly impossible at this time is the bringing you back. Like they can freeze you. Yeah. They have to keep you at a steady temperature, but the big thing that they can't do is bring you back, like unthaw you properly at a rate which won't destroy your cells. Yeah. And that's the thing they're having to figure out. And they think it might come down to nanotechnology. I was reading.
Because I think there are some misconceptions about cell damage to do with water, or with the freezing, expanding, and whatever. Apparently, because it's usually extracellular, unless they've done a really bad job of freezing you, it's not going to actually damage your cells.
No, it's the thawing that can damage your. If they don't do it at the right speed and temperature, that's the thing that can cause neurosis in the cells, I think.
Necrosis.
Necrosis, that's it.
Neurosis just makes me nervous. The main problem right now is
Sounds
you have
like
to
a great band, sorry. Neurotic cells.
Neurotic cells. The main problem right now, that's sort of like the least of their worries right now, because the main problem right now is you have to be legally dead to do it. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't read into the legalities of it.
You do have to be legally dead to do it. And so they're banking on, in the future, them developing the technology to basically restore your living brain from whatever structures of it are remaining. Right. Which is completely, there's no sense of how they'll be able to do that. It's just hoping they'll come up with it. That's it. So that's, I think, what they're hoping on nanotechnology for. Yeah. But at this point, basically, they can keep what they're trying to redefine death as being basically irretrievable loss of your sort of brain's anatomy, not it just being lost, that it's irretrievable. So they're saying, hypothetically, we hope we'll be able to do this in the future. Yeah. They have no inkling, actually, of how they'll be able to do that.
But the thing is, like, they can just freeze you, and then whenever that becomes available, that's when you'll be thawed out. That's the great thing about it.
But is it going to become available? Like, because right now, like I say,
you're going to have all the time though.
Yeah, assuming that it's even a priority for people in the future, because you need to have, like, first of all, an unlimited trust fund to maintain the cost of them keeping you preserved.
They could just download your consciousness into, like, a computer if it doesn't. There's multiple
but the thing is, they can't just get your consciousness out of your brain. They have to restore your brain, hopefully to close to what you used to be like, because they will have lost information. They're just hoping they'll be able to retrieve it somehow. And again, somehow, like they don't have any sense of how they'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then they'd be able to do that hypothetically.
Yeah.
Do whatever they want with your consciousness if they can restore it.
Yeah.
But like right now, it's like if I have a chalkboard and I erase kind of messily a bunch of it, and then later somebody in the future has that and they have to rewrite the rest of it, and they might have a few pretty good guesses, but at this point, there's nothing that's been invented that's going to help them do that. So we're just hoping that that will happen.
But we have time on our side, though. That's the thing. Like
we do, but we also don't know. Again, it's a huge amount of money to put into something that you have no idea if it'll happen.
Yeah. But you have yourself frozen, and you have that DNA, and you have everything that you need to work with, hopefully. And then at some point when it happens in the future, then that's when it happens, you know. And
that's the thing to me is you don't have everything you need to work with because you already have lost big chunks of how your brain works.
But that's compared to our technology now. Yeah. You know, we don't know where it's going to go in the future.
But it's not like, oh, he's fine, he's just frozen, and maybe we can cure his cancer. It's like, oh, this is a corpse, and we're hoping we can figure out who he was.
But they might be able to just replicate you from your DNA with all your memories and your consciousness.
Yeah, maybe. That'd be cool.
We don't know what's going to happen.
But that's the thing is, that could be optimistic. Like, we could say, oh, hopefully this will happen.
Given enough time, that might happen.
Yeah. And then that's the question as well, is like, how much time? Like,
well, that's the thing.
If you're brought back into a world that's totally unrecognizable to you, and I
don't know. At least you're alive. But but it's about seeing the future. That's what Robbie's asking. And to bring it back to that, would that be something that you'd want to do?
I think if I thought, I really don't think it's viable. I think at this point it's basically closer to religion than science. Yeah. If I thought it was viable, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I don't
hypothetical,
know.
So
it's not really sustainable if everybody does it, though, is it? Like, how long do you live then? Like, how many people are there going to be?
But we know that that's going to head in that direction with people, is our life's going to be extended drastically somehow through, the studies they're doing, thinking that death and aging is just a disease as opposed to something that's... So that is going to happen in one way or another. So
I think it's better... Your better hope is to age into that than it is to be a popsicle and hope somebody can figure out how to put you back together.
And with all things in science as well, it comes down to money. Not everyone's going to do it because not everyone's going to have the cash to freeze themselves.
Yeah. And it's super expensive. It's really prohibitively expensive. Because again, it's not just the one-off. It's maintaining you forever. Yeah. Forever. Like potentially, like literally forever.
In prison forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you wouldn't do it.
Not now, not with the given technology. Because again, it's like,
but we're hypothetically saying, like,
well, from today, no. Okay. I think it would be just putting off coming to grips with the fact that you're dying. Okay. Basically, I think if they were a bit closer to saying, oh, we've lost a bunch of your brain, but we can figure out how to get it back, that would be fine. That's the one thing that's like completely they have got nothing on, essentially.
But we're speaking in hypothetical terms, and just on the basis that you want to see the future.
But yeah, but if I was choosing hypothetically, I'd rather do time travel, basically.
Okay.
Because it's less...
That's not part of what he's asking.
Yeah, I know. But if we're doing purely hypothetical...
It's in relation to...
Yeah. I mean, if I could see the future, yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
But I don't think that's the way to do it. I don't think it's... I think people are fooling themselves with that one at this point.
There's a woman...
Wait, what about you?
Yeah, I'd do it.
Okay, cool.
There's a woman called Jean Hillard. Did you hear about this woman who froze to death for 6 hours and they brought her back?
Yeah.
She'd like... She was in a car accident in rural northwestern Minnesota. Left her car inoperable in sub-zero temperatures. She survived, and her recovery was described as a miracle.
Yeah.
So she full on was frozen to death for 6 hours, and they were able to sort of bring her back. I think it was potluck that they got her back.
And I think
she was wrapped in an electric blanket and 2 hours later she went into violent convulsions and regained consciousness. That probably woke her up.
Does she have brain damage?
No, she was perfectly fine.
Wow.
Mentally and physically, although a bit confused. Even the frostbite was like minimal.
That seems nearly impossible. That must be just total potluck. I think that's a problem as well, because stuff like that gets presented as being a reason why like cryonics would work. But the freezing part again isn't the problem to me. It's the part that they have to kill you to do it. And the minute you die, your brain starts losing what makes it you. And they have no way of getting that back, and they have no way of even guessing how they would begin to start to try and get it back. So,
Yeah.
What if it's like a Futurama situation where you get into the future, but you're shit and everything sucks because you're an old-timey human and everything's awful
I'm sure
for
there's
you?
technology to bring your consciousness up to speed.
What if it's some sort of capitalist hellhole and they don't want to waste their consciousness credits on a little waif scumbag from the past?
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for that, Robbie. Question.
I was interested in that one. That was cool. Yeah.
Okay. Next, on to. Let's see. Who do we have? Yeah, this is. I'll take. Okay, so we'll get on to Barry Lewis. This is a short one.
Mm-hmm.
Have I heard of Run the Jewels?
So my answer was yes, and you have too, because I played you one of their songs because it was in the Black Panther trailer and we liked it.
Okay,
but
so,
that's all I have.
Yeah, because his question was going to be based around that if I had heard of them, but because I hadn't, he was a bit reluctant to.
Okay.
So he kind of prefaced what they are for me to then go and listen to them. See, this is why all this copyright laws and everything's nonsense. We could have just listened to them together.
Yes, right now. But then we'd get
shared an experience online.
That is sad.
Oh, I give him a heart on Instagram. I
always
cool. Do that. So the supposedly Run the Jewels are two rappers from different backgrounds were put together by Adult Swim.
Oh,
to do a collab,
I love Adult Swim.
To do a collab. They hit it off and have been doing stuff ever since. They've even got a Rick and Morty music video.
Yes, yeah. I forgot about that.
So anyone that's not heard of them, check them out. Run the Jewels. Or Run the Jewel. Run the Jewels. Okay, check them out, and I will check them out this week. Sorry, Barry, I didn't listen to them. I didn't have time.
Yeah, but yeah, I really like that one song. And
yeah, the Black Panther one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's smart and funny. It's got a good beat. So, yes, we'll get back to you.
On to that was the short one. That's why I used that one.
It was a short one.
Another short one is by Kenneth, former guest, Babarinza.
Oh yeah.
If you could be anyone for an hour, who would you not be? Who would you be?
That's interesting. That's a cool question.
It feels like a bit of a teaser just to be an hour, though.
But that's why it would be like, make a cool choice.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's hard.
I mean, that's subjective, obviously, because is it in history or someone who's alive now?
Oh, that's a good question. Because if it was in history, I'd definitely do history.
Yeah.
Because if I did anyone alive now, I'd just be snooping, basically. Yeah.
It'd be so illegal.
Yeah.
I would be Enrique Iglesias' mole for an hour. So I could kiss his wife all the time. For an hour. Mole, mole, mole.
All the time for an hour.
No, I wouldn't.
No, that would be confusing.
I think I'd be someone who worked on Göbekli Tepe.
Nice. And you could figure out what the heck's going on. That'd be
cool. But you'd be so confused. Like, you're 14,000 years ago and you're there for an hour. I'd be like,
Yeah, like, why is Og suddenly so shit at stonemasonry?
It'd be the same as, like, waking up in the future where you're just so primitive. Like, imagine going back.
Yeah, you'd just be like...
You can't understand anything because there's no context.
That'd be a really good question. Is like... You wouldn't be able to actually understand what language people were speaking.
Well, I can speak Turkish. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, Turkish. Yeah, I'm sure they were speaking modern Turkish in Göbekli Tepe. They probably just spoke in emojis. It's probably fine.
Kebab.
Just say the poop emoji all the time. Yeah.
So
interesting.
Who would you be for an hour? Let's put it to history, not.
Yeah, and let's assume I can at least kind of understand the language or whatever.
I'd be world peace for a whole hour.
World peace. Like, honestly, if it was modern, if it was right now, this would be horrible and terrible, but I'd want to be Donald Trump for an hour just to see if he's crazy. Just to see, like, what's going on in there.
No.
Yeah, you'd be like, whoa, I have dementia, obviously. Like,
then you're going to know exactly what he looks like naked in his own mind.
I would definitely not. I would definitely resist that.
You're going to see his old ginger willy.
I would just like watch an hour of TV and eat a hamburger, but I would just really want to know what was going on with my brain.
Or steak, because he loves steak.
He loves
steak.
He
can't eat McDonald's because he fears that he's going to be poisoned.
I thought he only went to McDonald's because he was feared he was going to be poisoned.
Well, that's where it could happen. Mostly, like,
but not if it's like a random McDonald's. They're not going to poison like everyone at a random McDonald's. Whereas if you knew you were making Donald Trump steak.
Well, I'm sure they're going to know where he goes, and it's McDonald's.
That's true.
It's Donald Trump.
I can't say for sure, but I'm going to bet he eats a lot of spit.
Yeah, probably. I was like, where's that come? Oh, I get it.
History.
I know.
I'd want to go to one of those weird times where we weren't super clear about what was happening about stuff. But I'm trying to think of
The
a
60s.
good. Yeah. That wouldn't help because
You would come out not very clear about what's going on in your life
that's a
at
good
all.
point. It'd be super cool to be, let's see, for an hour. I'm going to go, this is because I've been listening to an Egypt podcast as well, but I'm going to go with Hatshepsut, who was one of the female pharaohs, not like a queen, but like an actual proper female pharaoh of ancient Egypt. And it'd be super cool to know what was going on with that because there's all sorts of weird things about the way she was depicted and stuff like that.
Explain.
Like they depict her like, you know,
Naked.
how no with the like they depict her as clearly a woman, but she has like the beards that the pharaohs all have. And I think it's just
Nothing weird about that.
it's unusual. They didn't do it with other
You're saying women don't
queens.
have beards.
But she didn't have it always. And I would just be interested. First of all, if you could figure out what was going on with ancient Egyptian civilization, not as a whole, obviously, that would be a lot of material.
Of course.
But between her like role and the way that she was allowed to operate and it's just such, we know a lot about them, but it's really opaque at the same time. So I'd be really intrigued.
Especially through sort of a woman's eyes, I guess.
Yeah. I'd probably rather be like a random person who worked in like a port in like Venice in like 1100 and just see what that was like, but I can't pick a random person because I don't know any of them. So
As a male or
either, probably a male at that point, just because you could get around better.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is that answered.
Cool. That was fun.
Cheers, Kenneth.
Cheers.
What do we have here? I think we'll go into something with a bit more bite.
Oh, yes.
Neil Sturchbury, fan of the podcast.
Sweet.
He put forward a question which I've not heard anyone else sort of pick up on. I've seen it myself in action, but he asked, do you think the recent upsurge in interest in Norse mythology in the sort of fitness industry is tainted by white supremacy or just culture in general?
Yeah.
Like everyone's really fascinated now, and there's a lot of people thinking it's to do with white supremacy as well. In America, there's a few people that have jumped on it, and he says he's got friends in the US who are Astrur,
which is like modern Norse.
how do you say it?
I'm not really sure how to pronounce it.
And they say they're having to constantly argue that it's not against it being a white religion.
Yeah. This is the question. One of the questions I was most interested in.
Because he says they've sort of came up parallel. Like he was not saying that he thinks the fitness industry is full of white supremacists. He just thinks there's two entities that have simultaneously came up parallel to each other, but not necessarily linked.
Yeah, I think there are a couple interesting factors in here to do with why they could end up being associated with each other, but why they shouldn't be inherently. Yeah. I think the first thing is it's important to remember that Norse mythology was also co-opted by the Third Reich. Yeah. So it's not a new thing that it's being associated with white supremacy, but it's also not inherently linked with white supremacy. It's like a misunderstanding. Yeah. It's like, and I think like I read a few things that like white supremacists now had said about basically Christianity's too brown for them. That was like, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, obviously.
It sounds like Mac and It's Always Sunny.
Yes, that was who I was picturing actually saying this shit. And that basically this is this is a religion by white people for white people. And first of all, I think obviously we don't know a ton about Norse.
Well, who were
culture.
The first Christians?
They were not white.
Middle Eastern.
Exactly. So hence discarding kind of Christianity to an extent. Yeah. And again, latching on to like, oh, this was made up by presumably blonde, blue-eyed people, so it must be for us. Yeah. There's nothing at all in Norse culture to say that they were even really aware of race, let alone that they had any racial notions. There's more to suggest that they traded a lot with other cultures, and that sort of absorption and adaptation was what they were about, not like excluding.
Do you think that anything that white people partake in can be seen just because it's white people that are congregating together, whatever it is, ultimately it's for racist reasons?
I think the problem is more with people who are self-proclaimed racists who are using pagan symbols.
But is there not people from the outside that can... We know there's groups out there looking towards things that white people do, and I'm not... Obviously, there are racists, and that's clear. But when it's other people on the other side looking to anything that white people do and then just proclaiming them racist because of that.
I think white culture is still the mainstream of the culture
of
on
course.
the whole, so I don't think
I'm not saying it's
that.
not mainstream though, but I'm saying like there are going to be people who look towards anything that white people have participated in and are participating in, and just ultimately calling it racism because it's not worshipping black gods, it's worshipping people who we associate as white.
I mean, I guess there would be people who would say that, but I don't think that's intelligent. I think that would be basically racist.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that would be the biggest problem either in terms of there, again, being people who are explicitly white supremacists who are co-opting like runes and stuff like that. From what I've read, sort of modern sort of Odinist or Astar, blah, 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 I can't really pronounce it. That was
Azra.
So I guess it's like if they worship the Aesir, which were some of the Norse. I'm not sure, but they're
Astaru is Astaru.
Astaru. Let's say that.
I
don't know.
Astaru.
Cool. One of the things that sort of differentiates a pagan religion from like a Judeo-Christian one is there isn't a dogma. There aren't like specific things that are like, we do this, we don't do that. Like there's nothing like that. So it's really susceptible to whoever's following it to just put stuff onto it, whether for good or for bad. So there seems to be a conscious movement amongst like neo-pagans or whatever to establish, like even think of Heilung and they're making it clear that they're about like embracing people and like connecting with the earth,
nature,
as opposed to
elemental things, as opposed to sort of man-made sort of ideals and politics
and sort of like violence and politics. And I think like from what I've read, the pagan community, at least at its sort of like founding level, has an understanding that they need to come up with this stuff and generate material on this stuff so they can make it clear like what they're about, as opposed to it being about like white people are cool. I guess there might be a danger with the optics if you look at this religion and it is associated with sort of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, plunderers, that people would be like, oh, that's such a... You can see why it would be a draw to white supremacists if they misunderstand it. Like it's like a pop culture version of Vikings. It's not really what they're meant to have been about. So I can see, I guess, back to your point about somebody from the outside being like, well, this is... Because it's not just that it's a thing that was originally made up by white people or that it's mostly drawing... I don't even know if it's mostly drawing in white people, but you're more likely to have a cultural connection to it if you're white, just because you're more likely to be white if you're Scandinavian, basically.
And
but
it's probably the only exclusive... It's not an exclusive thing, but because of the colour of their skin and the people that are looking to it, it seems like exclusive to that type of culture. So then just by it being that, then that makes people on the outside feel like it is racist.
But I think that's as much...
I'm just devil's...
No, I think so. I think that's as much of a misunderstanding of it as to interpret it as being racist for yourself if you're racist.
But I'm not talking about actual white supremacists. I'm just talking about on the sort of peripheral...
So, what I would say is I don't think that there's a lot in there that people would come up with it from the outside on their own to say this must be for racists, but it's easy to see from the outside this is something that racists are drawn to, I guess. But I think it does involve a huge misunderstanding of what it's about. It's just people seeing what they want to see in it. But it is too bad because like I think it's super interesting and cool, and you just don't want to like you follow an Instagram page, you're like, nope. So
but I have seen an uptick in the rise of an uptick. an uptick of the use of Norse mythology, and I think I said it to you. I was like, I think it's going to explode in the next year. This was like 2 years ago when you were sort of starting to, a year and a half ago when you were starting to design my logo.
Yeah.
And I said, like, I think this is going to go this way, and it did. Not that I was in any position. I just was starting to see on different media formats that I follow, and it just appearing there and here that I just assumed and put together this was the path that's going to go down.
Yeah.
And the fitness industry is sort of taking to it. If you look at it, the fitness industry isn't as interested in religion or anything like that. It's all about just basic simple things like a Viking is stereotypically seen as strong
warriors,
a warrior, someone who's a berserker, someone who gets on with it, and it's a mindset as opposed to sort of following the religion. It's just like about getting in there, grow your beard, look like a badass, and lift like a badass. And I think that's as far as it goes in the fitness industry when it comes to this. And
I think it's fair as well because, again, back to the dogma thing, like, we don't know how they practice their religion, really. Like, we've got the stories and we've got some artifacts, but there isn't this sense of, like, we don't have a dogma for it, so there's no... But it's sort of free for people to interpret it in a way. And it's also just, they've got some cool shit. Like, it's cool.
They're celebrating the culture as opposed to the religion, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's an interesting distinction because there are certainly people who are practicing it as a religion, and that number is actually growing, which is interesting.
Same with in Greece.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, my favorite thing in the world is the Greek, like, pagan website. It makes me so happy. It's very much something I would have made when I was like 11. But it's cool. And I was reading a thing about, like, what I read was that...
hold that thought for 2 seconds. Yes. Finish that thought.
Where was I?
Talking about pagans and Norse mythology.
Yeah. So when I Googled Astaru, which I still don't know if I'm pronouncing right, because I did actually have to look that word up. My understanding is that it was founded in Iceland in like the 70s or 80s. Like it's been ticking along for a while, but they're now up to, I'm going
to have a little look at it.
Yeah. It was a few thousand people who count themselves as that being their primary religion now in Iceland, and it's a small population. It's second now to Christianity, apparently.
Oh, the actual name of it is heathenry.
Heathenry, yes.
That's brilliant.
That sounds
Bunch of heathens.
so heathen in terms of like, oh, it's just a spot of heathenry.
Wow, yeah.
But that's a funny one because that could be like, you could be Celtic heathen, or you could be a Norse heathen, or you could be a generally chill heathen, or you could be presumably heathen anywhere as long as you're not monotheistic. Is that right? I guess.
Yes.
So you could be like an African heathen.
So they're saying no, this is on Wikipedia on heathenry. They're saying no central religious authority exists to impose a particular terminology designation on all practitioners. Hence, different heathen groups have used different words to describe their religion and themselves.
Super chill.
See, that's what it should be.
Yeah. I really like the idea of it, like connectedness to the past and to earth and stuff, but I think the last thing we need is more gods. We need to chill out on gods.
I think it's more to do with all ideas, when enough people become to believe in them, become dogma.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't need. We don't need things that are sort of immovable and not subject to scrupulation and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah. And I like the guy I was reading about who was talking about Astaro. He was talking about defining their terms, but long form, like not like 10 things or whatever, but like a number of people write essays and they compile them and you can pick and choose basically. Like I like the idea of something like that more, because you can, take, values and morals and community sense and everything from it, but you can leave the stuff that doesn't appeal to you. And as long as they don't start pulling people's toenails out because they're doing heathenry wrong, which isn't the heathen vibe usually, I think if you must have something, that's cool. Yeah. Again, I'm sure there will be people who go nuts with it, including obviously big. I think also,
there's always going to be people that take it to an extreme.
Yeah. Or smush ugly ideals onto it, as in the case of the white supremacy. I think the other problem we're having is that it's a lot easier to talk about being a white supremacist now than it was a few years ago. And I think we all know why.
Well, yeah, this is something that I heard on the news when it was in relation to Roseanne. And there was the question put forward that, do we think that there's these types of things that are coming up and people thinking that they can talk about it on a public format because of the president they have, And
that's entirely possible. And maybe that's why we haven't heard this type of thing from her before. Maybe she thought that was just okay.
Totally.
And, they've talked about that in the UK as well in response to the whole hostile environment thing in terms of immigration, that people do feel they have a mandate to be racist and xenophobic.
Yeah. Totally. Oh, sorry.
So I think,
checking
that our feed is good.
The stream health, sorry.
I think.
So I'm so not professional.
You're all right. When, you go back a few years and Obama's in power, I don't remember hearing about there being semi-mainstream white supremacist groups. And now there are.
Do you think if it continued down that path that it wouldn't have became such a thing? Do you think it was only just because it went back the way with the Trump that it got sort of, it all just went, maybe we were making a step forward. I mean, I know Obama did some abhorrent things, and I don't necessarily think it was him. I think it was like just being in the government that's what happens. There's decisions that are made, and lawyers.
I agree, yeah.
But I think we were at a point of progress, and I think with Trump, it just went back the way, and swung completely the other way. And if it had been a progression after Obama, someone who was just as intelligent and sort of articulate, but wanted to take it sort of more for the people and maybe added to what Obama was doing. And do you think we wouldn't have heard all about this gender politics and racism? And do you think it would have seen as something that would be able to be fixed as opposed to something that's just a huge problem?
I'm of two minds because I don't believe any of that stuff came from nowhere. It's not like people had not thought of that stuff and then suddenly decided to do it when they saw they had a chance.
But I think it's exacerbated and seemed as sort of hopeless with Trump in power.
Yeah. Well, my part two of that was that I think less looking at specific stuff of why have sort of social politics gone kind of nuts, and we can include all sorts of different things in that. I think it is just because the example we're getting of the rhetoric people are using is so immature and so devolved compared to what was happening under Obama.
But do you think if things had happened that have happened under Trump and just been ignored and sort of left to to go out of control. If it had happened under Obama, do you think he would have made an example out of it and sort of made sure that these type of things didn't happen again and things changed?
I don't think it even really would have happened because I don't think people knew they could speak to each other that way. And then when they've seen that the most powerful man, arguably in the world, can act like that, of course they all can too. Of course you can shout people down and, you know, have complete tweet diarrhea. I think it's...
Imagine if he didn't write his own tweets. That would be so hilarious.
I read a thing, and I don't know if it's true, about people who write things for him have a style guide which including spelling mistakes so that it sounds like him. I don't know if that's true, but it
and repeating
was
the same word over and over again.
And lots of exclamation points. I think it's less to do about what people are talking about. It's more to do with the way that they're talking.
Yeah.
I think probably people had all of these stupid ideas, but they had a better example of how to comport themselves maybe. So I don't know maybe if it's good that it's all getting out into the fresh air and we're seeing like who is actually secretly like a white supremacist. Like I guess I'd rather know if people are, but... Because
then all the sort of dreary undertones of society is coming to fruition and we're seeing it for what it really is, as opposed to sort of Obama and the hope message and change just sort of covering what's really happening.
I don't know if it all still would have been in there, but
Good question.
It's also like one of those, if you can't say it, you can't see it things. Like maybe people just would not have confronted it and it would have chilled out. Or maybe it was all in there and it would have like erupted in some disgusting way in the future. I don't know. That's a really weird one, but I think it's probably a lot to do, again, not with people so much having a mandate to think specific things. It's more just the way that they communicate and the right they feel that they have to communicate those things.
Cool.
Sorry,
Neil, we went slightly off topic there, but thanks for your question.
That one was
really cool. Really good one.
Yeah, hopefully
that was
we did it justice.
I think
somewhat.
you and John would be in contention for the t-shirt for the best.
yeah.
But for wildly different reasons.
Yeah.
Where are we going to go with this? Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get on my computer.
Computer?
There's a few short ones from former guest Robert Garrett.
Sweet.
He asks, why did I start the podcast? Among other things, there's a few short fire ones that I'll talk about.
Sweet. So I think this round's on you.
Yeah. This is one I've been asked before, and I think he specifically has asked me a few times. And I end up just talking around it because it's here nor there how I started why I started it.
I don't really know actually, because I know kind of maybe your influences and stuff, but I don't really know why you one day got up and decided to do it.
Well, I've always had a thing in my life, and whether it be American football or guitar when I was younger or MMA, I've always had something that I've worked on and was able to sort of get my head down and just focus on, and something that I had weekly to sort of work on. I think I was in a relationship at that point and I didn't really have something, and it was kind of, to me, it was something that was up against the person that I was in the relationship with that had something that was all encompassing in their life. And I was like, oh, like I've been out of MMA for like 6 months. I felt like I wanted something to do, just to work on and be, proud of. And this is when it started, like 3 years ago initially. And I did like 6 episodes, and then I went traveling for a bit. I started it because specifically a podcast and not just anything else, because I like talking to people, and I wanted an avenue to aim that sort of conversational skills down a venue, and podcasting just seemed prime for what I did on nights out. I would get drunk and I'd get really intense with anybody that would listen, and I'd just talk I'd talk about them. Like I'd try and ask questions, and like I'm wasted and they're wasted, and I would just pester them about their life, like what they did and their job, and get so wrapped up in it. And I'm always interested in people and their relationship to their work or their people in their life, you know, just anything. And it just fascinates me. Anthropology in any sense, you know, is just an amazing thing. And I wanted to connect like people that I knew. I wanted to bring them on the show and talk about stuff, not because I had anything to say, but because I wanted people to hear their stories and stuff that they were into, or how they act and how they get through their life, you know, and how they've been getting through their life. And I just thought people would want to hear that.
Yeah, I just to throw my 2 cents in there, but like from the very first time I met you, I noticed how interested you were in speaking with people, and regardless of their age or demographic or gender or background or anything like that. And I felt that your ability to do that could only come out of genuine interest and enthusiasm. Like, so it wasn't like you were humoring people.
Yeah.
It was like you really genuinely...
Well, I wasn't humoring people. I can't humor anyone on this podcast.
And it's interesting to think of that sort of scaled up to the podcast format. I've never quite thought of it that way. I guess I've thought of that as being a reason why maybe guests wouldn't find you difficult to speak to. Yeah. But yeah, like the just powered by genuine interest part of it, I hadn't actually really thought about. So, but that's very much how you interact with people.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. It's really annoying. I hate it.
Just to sort of extend that, there is a question in between this from Rob, but the latter part of it does sort of tie into this. He says, you've always been good at steering conversation and asking the right questions. Has the podcast honed that in, and has it changed my everyday people skills? Obviously doing the podcast, sometimes 3 hours, 3.5 hours every podcast, you know, that adds up to a lot of hours. And I think this is my 48th episode.
Jeepus.
I know.
Lordy.
So times that by 3 or 2.
I can't. I can't.
You've got a lot of hours.
A lot.
So naturally, you're whatever direction that you're going in, it's going to naturally, you're going to get better at it through osmosis and repetition. That's what happens. But as to my everyday exchanges with people, it definitely had an impact. You know, I've always been terrible because of my intenseness when I speak to people. I've always been terrible at small talk. I can't do it. Like, it was just something that I was just so bad at, and I would just avoid it because I knew I would have to speak to this person on a brief sort of conversation, but it would have to be just benign stuff. Like, I refused to ask people about, the weather. You know? And when I worked in jobs where you had to do that sort of thing, I really struggled with it. And I just thought, no one cares about the weather. Why? I don't want to do something that people don't care about.
Yeah.
But I think talking and meeting people even before they arrive here, and when they arrive, you know, there's all the conversation that goes on before that, as well as the conversation that happens on the podcast. So every guest, you know, 48 people that I've had on, probably there's been like maybe 40 of them that are different people.
A bunch of them have been me, to be fair. Yeah.
Of course. And it's really awkward with you at the start.
Yeah, it was terrible, awful. And obviously I have several different personalities as well, so you never know who you're getting. It's a whole thing.
But what it's helped mostly is my sort of small talk skills, and that's something that I'm sort of really, really happy with, because it was like a social anxiety as well with it, because I had a fear of being alone with someone. Like, I'm great at like playing guitar in front of thousands of people, doing MMA, and I fought in the Kelvin Hall, which is like a few thousand people, you know. Doesn't bother me. The people don't get to me. I've done that, but when it's like a one-on-one situation, that I struggle with that, and I have done all my life. And this has really helped me with that, you know, because it's not about trying to have the best conversation. It's just ultimately interacting with people and having relationships. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and shooting the shit. It's funny because I think of like you doing MMA and like, so basically you were more comfortable getting punched in the face by somebody than you were talking about the weather with them. Like, that's interesting. Like,
it would just make me feel like a grind under my skin. It just made my toes curl when I would do that.
Because like in working in hospitality, I do have a fair bit of small talk, and I I don't even notice I'm doing it. Like it's just like word salad. And then sometimes people ask you genuinely interesting things.
Yeah.
And I know some people enjoy being asked about themselves or learning things about other people. I really enjoy actually just being asked about wine or hearing about people's experiences with wine. And then I can get my nerd on and then I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I genuinely just don't even remember, even while I'm having them, essentially, the conversations with people that are like, oh, you know, it's always easier for me if I can find something that stands out to talk about, like even if they just like have a weird shirt or something. I'll be like, hey, your shirt's weird, but I'll find a way of mentioning it or something. But and it's easier if you can be funny as well. I hate being just boring. And usually I'm okay at that.
But you're naturally very funny with how you word things. Like you just have this the most amazing turn of phrase.
Thank you.
And it's something that people like when I see you interacting with people at the wine bar, specifically the food market. Yeah. Just seeing how people like catch what you say. Like it takes them a second to register, but they just like laugh because of how you say it, and it's just
because that's what I'd like, and those are all my best interactions with like customers, service people, or hospitality people. It's always the ones you remember because it was weird but like fun. Like I remember going to see a film, which was a film I was surprised you'd seen, called Rare Exports. Yeah. Which is a very strange Finnish. It's sort of a Christmas film, but it's mostly mythological / kind of horror, but it's weird basically. And I went to see it in cinema in Dublin when I lived there, and we got our tickets and we were going up the escalators to where the cinema was, and the guy who checked our tickets said, now you are aware that this is not a usual Christmas film. And I still remembered, it was so funny. And so I try and kind of work with that type of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. We all have to find our ways with coping of these things that we have to do day to day, whether it's in your job or just as a human person.
It's helped me a lot with that. I mean, the sort of gap between me in my mind between my sort of small talk and my conversations where I get in depth. There's a huge chasm, but I've shortened it through doing these podcasts, and I'm eternally grateful for it. Even if no one ever listens to the show, it's just helped me in my day-to-day life.
That's cool.
Immensely, you know.
I find it funny that doing a very long format podcast has helped you generate small talk. I know. Like you never had a problem doing what you're already doing. Basically, it's funny.
Yeah, I've never really struggled with that.
No.
But I think the first time I had like a 3-hour conversation was on the podcast, and and we've talked about, and I've talked about it to former guests, and I've talked about it to you. You've brought it up a lot as well, and it's just, when do you ever get to talk this long with anyone? Like it's usually a lecturer, maybe like a 2-hour lecturer speaking at you, but there's no like conversating. It's just a lecture.
Or you'd have, say, dinner with someone or your family or whatever, but you know there's distractions,
and it's broken up by like other guests, but like one-on-one. It's
amazing, and I feel, with the exception of the last one because I was so tired, but I feel like elated after. And it's not just because we drink loads of beers.
You feel like you've just sort of decompressed orally somehow, you know.
Blah, like that. And I never think of myself. I always feel like the thing I struggle most with is getting time on my own. I have enough time with other people, but it's amazing how much having a proper focused conversation, like how good that makes me feel. It's crazy.
And I'm so desperate. Not desperate. I mean, that seems desperate, obviously, but I just want to. I don't want to be successful to be successful. Like I genuinely want to have conversations with, you know, people that are in fields that are interested in and topics that I find fascinating, and generally sort of have an effect on conversation that's happening. That would be like an ultimate goal for me. Like if I knew that people were changing their opinion or talking about what I just said on a podcasting in day-to-day conversation, then that in itself to me is like just like little old me, you know, someone from a tiny, well not tiny, like the most densely populated town in Scotland
with 4 pages of Yelp reviews on its hedge apparently, or TripAdvisor. Anyway, another story.
From a small big town, having an effect on something, you know. Sometimes you can get caught up in that disparity, and that can be overwhelming, but you just have to actually put your head in and keep continuing to do what you do and just plug away and chip away. You know, some people it happens for instantaneously, just through situations they have in their life, and other times, like me, I'm just plugging away. You know, I'm talking to people and having great conversations.
No, and I think for me, well, obviously I'm super prejudiced because you're my boyfriend and I love you, but the fact that you do actually genuinely want to hear what people have to say, and you do want to learn things and hear different opinions, as opposed to you want to have a podcast and you're reverse engineering based on, like, I guess I have to listen to people now for hours and hours, that it's sort of like conversation up as opposed to podcast down. I think that, and
I'm not trying to blow my horn, but it's hard for me to do what guests do when they come on here, and to have a sort of a strong opinion on something. Like,
right,
I can't come from that place because nothing in my life is certain when it comes to my opinion. Like, I rarely have like an amazing, like a real strong opinion on anything unless it's Star Wars.
I was just gonna say,
but it's because it's ever shifting. Like, I never take anything as just that's the way it's going to be. So I always applaud people that come on here and have like not fixed, but something that they strongly feel about and are very, like, they have a vision of what they want to do in their life and get there through just this one way of getting there. And I think that's amazing. Like, I just always think my opinion's ever changing and malleable. Not that I'm easily manipulated or anything like that, but just because I want to get the best out of everything. Yeah.
And I think, again, as a host, and this isn't just me like high-fiving you forever and ever. I should stop after this. But high five. High five. It's helpful for you to be kind of plastic, and by which I mean like moldable or malleable, in terms of your set of opinions and kind of motives and stuff as well as a host. In some ways it wouldn't be as appropriate for you to come into this with some sort of hobby horse that you wanted to prove and you want to make your guest you know, prove it or disagree with you and you want to argue with them and be right, basically. So it's in some ways easier to be a guest because you get to just take a stand, whereas you have to generate conversation out of it.
But even though I say that about my, like, I'm more fluid, another part of this podcast that's helped with me is actually to sort of formulate my own opinions as well, because that was something I grew up not doing. I was always taking in as opposed to dissecting that information and then turning it into my own opinion. Like, that was something that this is immeasurably helped with. Because I'm speaking to people that are like that, but I can't just go through, you can't go through your whole life not having like a strong sort of opinion, and that has made me more aware of that and being able to sort of take what information I take and then being able to like dissect that, take what I take, and then come out with something that I think is a version of, you know, you can only take it as what you think at the time is the best version of that and talk about it and use that as your opinion. Yeah.
And I think that's it, like talking about all this sort of like white supremacy and polarized left and right and stuff like that. Just rewinding to the last question. But the only hope we have is not helping people, but fostering a society in which critical thinking is like supported, because it's not like, I think between even just the exercise of playing devil's advocate or like having to support a side you don't necessarily think is tenable, just as sort of like a fact/empathy exercise. Like when I grew up and I did debating, you just get a side assigned, like randomly you get like, okay, so you're the crown and you're the whatever, and you have to say that you think same-sex marriage should be illegal, and you'd have to be like, well, obviously I don't think that. Holy crap, how am I going to do this? Is there a way I can do this without totally betraying my morals, or do I just like and these sort of exercises and actually examining information, I think we get so much information now, and this sort of stuff keeps being discussed, like fake news and all that, but and we've talked about it before as well in terms of like statistics and there seems to be a basic inability for people to understand certain givens. Even things like just justice, like the way the justice system works, the difference between capital J justice and lower J justice, like stuff like that, or the way statistics are presented. Like they're just little things that people
don't like. I can't remember who said this. It might be Jordan Peterson.
You said his name right.
I know. I had to think of it and then reverse it in my head.
Yes,
and I got
not
it right.
Peter Jordan.
Because I always call him Peter Jordanson.
I like the idea that he maybe like stalks the streets at night as Peter
Peter
Jordanson.
He calls everyone by their preferred pronoun.
Yeah, exactly. The gentle Peter Jordanson. Acknowledging your choices.
Amazing. I'm not sure where I heard this, but they said that going to university should give you the scientific tools to be able to do that, like dissect something, look at it, what's the word I'm looking for? Look at it
critically?
Yeah. And be able to break it down and then form an opinion using facts and knowing where things might go wrong with statistics, so to speak, are notoriously able to be manipulated for whatever opinion that you want. And he says that that's what you should base your life in, is like having that scientific toolkit to be able to break these things, just basic toolkits for everyone. And that's what's not happening in a lot of circumstances. And I think when they're denying things, I guess.
Yeah, it's just denying basic critical faculties. And I think debate is also really important, and to understand that it isn't necessarily about your opinion or even about truth. It's about like the exercise of debate. I think that's...
Is that a bad thing or a good thing though? Because you could basically take something you don't believe in and successfully argue it, i.e. like defense lawyers or prosecution, you know.
I think it's a good experience to have maybe as a young person because it helps you understand that that you need to apply critical thinking to these things that you hear, and that information can be manipulated. And that also sometimes there's a difference between what you in your heart of hearts morally think is right and what the system requires. And that doesn't give you an automatic outcome. That doesn't mean you have to uphold one or the other. It's just important to understand that your justice isn't necessarily justice or someone else's justice.
It's all sort of subjective.
Yeah, like they are systems. It's not natural necessarily. Wow, we're starting to get really tangential, but that's cool.
Can't remember what relation. Oh, this was Robert Garrett's question about me honing my skills. That was good. That was a good sidetrack there.
Yeah, it was cool. I'm glad somebody's
the middle two questions were favorite book and favorite guest.
Oh, so, should I leave the room for favorite guest? Let's say other than me, because obviously I'm your favorite.
My favorite guest so far, that is a hard one. There's been a few. I think in terms of just being able to talk, as I can speak to you, I think Robert is probably one of the ones. Robert Garrett.
I've really enjoyed his appearances as well.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like sort of like he's on a quest for something, and I don't think he knows exactly what it is.
And hopefully it's not a cult.
But he's I mean, I love him. He's an awesome guy, and we have great conversations when he's been on here. But like I said, he seems to be on a quest to find something. I don't think he knows exactly what it is, but he is open to everything in his life to sort of maybe get him there. And that's what he's doing, and he has amazing conversations in the meantime, you know. And
I think we've talked about it, and it would be really fun to do this, to have a podcast with the two of us and him as well. I think that would be really interesting. I think
that might be one we'll set up,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and have on James the Creature next week.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
He's an Icelandic drag queen.
Swiss via Iceland.
Lived in Iceland, but is from Switzerland and does drag shows.
And he's friends with Jazz, who was formerly on this podcast, who is probably one of my favorite podcast guests, because she's one of my best friends.
She was awesome. She was one of the top ones, and you constantly are great because...
because what else are you going to say? Because I'm going to beat you up.
You know what was fantastic about the beginnings of our relationship? I mean,
I'd love to know.
I'm going to get all soppy here. Is the crazy sex. No.
You're such a butt. Remember when my parents used to like you?
Remember when they used to listen to this? No, is the crazy conversations that we would have.
Yeah.
And I constantly had the feeling, because I had done the podcast like a few years before that, and I was always just had this feeling like we have to get these conversations out somehow, because they're just, you become from totally different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Totally different schooling systems, obviously, that's all part of that. Different upbringing, different ways of parenting, and sort of like just you're extremely academic, and your memory is just amazing, like just sharp.
Because I'm really smart. It's not because I'm really.
And you're very witty.
I'm just kidding.
And and we're different, but we're very similar at the same time. Like we both have like interest in just pursuing truth, but not in a dogmatic way, just in a way that will benefit us and hopefully make life better for everyone.
I find it really funny that in spite of our very different backgrounds and I think we both have a few sort of structural differences to the kind of, maybe our, I don't know, but like not quite values or morals, but just to our sort of givens maybe. Yeah. But I think at the same time, we've arrived at a lot of the same conclusions about stuff. And I find that really funny.
We usually argue about something to get, like, it's always something that's not like, not dishes or anything bullshit like that.
But it's like something really specific, and also almost always something that we could look up. But we're not great. And it's always
we end up arguing, agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And I think basically what happens is we usually mean pretty much the same thing, or we're like,
someone mistaken.
We've both got just different ends of the same stick pretty much, or like, but I think like we get so, yeah, it's weird. It's like we need to put arguing into somewhere, and that's what it is. So then it's about, again, it's always stuff we could look up on Wikipedia. Yeah. It's always like, did Greek soldiers wear sandals? Like, it's like,
no, the shield formation.
Oh, that was the shield. Yeah, we had like one of our like, and that was when I was home as well. So my dad was like, "Oh my god," but it was about like shield formations, and it was so stupid. And I think we'd had like a lot of wine as well at that point. But the thing is,
it's so stupid at the time, but in hindsight, I love the fact that that's what we do argue about. Like,
yeah, me too.
Not just like the day-to-day worries, or, that's not stuff that we worry about.
Yeah, and it's not really, this is turning into like couples therapy on air, but it's not stuff that's about our relationship. No. It's not like, don't follow cute girls online or whatever. And it's not about, it is about trivia, but it's not about completely trivial, like it's about knowledge basically, as opposed to like dishes again.
And you can't always agree with like a partner. It has to be like,
that would be weird.
We're sort of like testing each other slightly to sort of get the best out of each other.
I think so. And a lot of the times I realize I'll have done the kind of, Coyote in the Roadrunner cartoons, and he's like right out on a ledge, and he's like, as long as I don't look down, it's fine.
Anyway, apart from all that sort of schmushy stuff. Thank you, Robert. You are one of my favorite guests.
Aww. And then you should come on the podcast with us. And
we'll get that together.
And he's one of your only guests I haven't met. There's just a few I haven't met, so.
I've had a number. Like I really enjoyed Chris, obviously, because I think he's in a point in his life where he's gonna do some good things with MMA. Paul Craig as well. He was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot.
Jazz, that was great. One of my more kookier ones that I wish I'd probably got back on is Jan from Black Metal.
Yeah, because that was your first like cold stranger podcast. Like you'd never met him. No, you didn't.
And it was it was one that I worried about slightly because I didn't know what he was like,
and he's super crazy, which is fun.
But he's awesome,
Yeah, he's doing something really interesting. We learned more later that he's sort of like an enfant terrible in the Edinburgh beer scene as well.
He's seen as a complete renegade.
Yeah, just totally. And sometimes you think people are bigging themselves up to seem like that, and they're like, no, you get the police called on you like, a lot. So that was cool.
So thanks, Garrett. You also asked favorite book.
Oh my god, that's hard.
And This is similar to saying your favorite movie. I don't think you can have a favorite movie unless you're totally an idiot.
I could do a top few, but it's hard.
Few. But you can't whittle it down to one book.
No,
but
because they do different things.
For me, the book that really pushed me as a person and intellectually and all sort of formats and all cylinders was Howard Zinn's The People's History of the United States.
Yeah.
And that was the book where you realise what the history books tell us and what the people who win wars tell us and how history is shaped is not necessarily what the people on the ground are saying either. And yeah, it's really in depth, and it starts from obviously when the Spanish arrive on the shores of South America all the way up until 9/11 and all the sort of current, yeah. And it's all obviously the people's version of what happened, and it's it's a great book. Cool. And Howard Zinn's like a famous sort of author for that kind of stuff. If anyone checks out, that's not because it's my favorite book. It's just because of what it did to my life. You know? Yeah. And the after effects. Not because the information is revelationary, but that's not why it's my favorite book. It's because it's like Fight Club for me is like the way it made me analyze movies. Yeah. Watching it.
Yeah. And there's always it's like a turning point or something or like a launch pad. Yeah.
Extend it to you.
God. This is a hard one for me.
The Bible. Yours the Bible.
The Bible, of course. I love the Bible. Chicken soup for the teenage soul. No. Well, one that I've come back to over and over again. And it's weird because it's not like I have certain books that I can reread and I find them like in a way like soothing or exciting. Like you can kind of, it's like listening to music and you know the way it'll make you feel. So you can kind of program those feelings within yourself by doing it.
Yeah. You can bring yourself, back into that.
And I guess books for me that do that, it's what I was referring to earlier, William Gibson, once he stopped writing cyberpunk and started writing just literary fiction. Right. And it's 3 books, Pattern Recognition, Zero History, and Spook Country. Wow. And they're just, it's like if somebody put my brain in a blender and is like, we made a book of all the stuff you like, that would be that. But for me, the one I come back to the most is Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. Right, okay. So it's a slim volume. And
that's what I call you. Fatso.
Cheers. It's hard to describe. It's basically meant to be Marco Polo telling stories of his adventures to the Kublai Khan, but it's like very.
Do you think this is what they based the TV series on?
No, because there's a bunch of other versions of it, and this one isn't what it does on the tin. Like it's different. Because there's a few other like more earnest accounts of that, but this one it's
sort of
super surreal and postmodern. Yeah. So it's a series of descriptions of cities that are all made up. And there's a lot of sort of
like was it Kirkcaldy? That's pretty mean.
Yeah, basically. But it's like there's a lot of back and forth about like the meaning of place and like a speculation about, because there will be passages where it's actually Marco Polo and Kublai Khan speaking to each other, and then there are chapters that are just descriptions of cities, and they're it's kind of like magic realism. It's really surreal. Like they're impossible places. And in some of them, it's like at a certain point, the Kublai Khan points out like the only city you never describe is Venice, which is the city that Marco Polo is meant to be from. And he says, well, maybe the only city I ever describe is Venice. Like you don't know what he's doing. Okay. I could grab it and read like one of them just to give people a sense. I had lent it to a friend and I just got it back, so I know where it is. I'll just read a short one. Fascinating. Yeah, because it's hard to describe it. There's not a narrative basically.
Yeah, go for it. It's always crazy like when people and authors can take like a specific part of history and write something that's not like not true about it, and just sort of surrealness, and like just take a small part of him speaking to the Kublai Khan. That is something that you can't even imagine what they said to each other, and then just make something that's completely surreal out of it is just it takes some imagination.
And it stops being a book about like character or history, and it's basically a book about books. It's meta, but it's also like I'm so fascinated with place and how people experience it.
Okay. So Laura's funny stories.
I'm just trying to find a short one. I've got a bunch of dog-eared ones.
She's actually reading Roald Dahl.
Yes, exactly.
Time is ticking.
I'm just looking for a good short one. Okay. So here's a short one that I don't know why I've dog-eared. I'm just making
Okay.
sure there's not a shorter one that I've dog-eared. No. So this is called Cities and Eyes, and it's arranged not into chapters, they're into categories. So there are some that are trading cities, there are thin cities, there are
Okay.
cities and signs.
So these are cities that are not real.
We don't know.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all have potentially real names, but maybe not. Okay. So after a 7 days march through woodland, the traveler directed toward Balkis cannot see the city, and yet he has arrived. The slender stilts that rise from the ground at a great distance from one another and are lost above the clouds support the city. You climb them with ladders. On the ground, the inhabitants rarely show themselves. Having already everything they need up there, they prefer not to come down. Nothing of the city touches the earth, except there's long flamingo legs on which it rests, and, when the days are sunny, a pierced angular shadow that falls on the foliage. There are 3 hypotheses about the inhabitants of Bacchus: that they hate the earth, that they respect it so much they avoid all contact, that they love it as it was before they existed, and with spyglasses and telescopes aimed downward, they never tire of examining it, leaf by leaf, stone by stone, ant by ant, contemplating with fascination their own absence.
Wow.
So if you think of it, you're like, well, that's crazy. Like, that's a cool city, whatever. But then you think of it in relation to
Flamingos.
flamingos, like now, and like environmentalism or like urban dwellers' fetishization of like green spaces. Like you just immediately start snowballing the way you think about it.
I just imagine you in a sort of rom-com in high school reading a poem to your
Girlfriend?
your
'Cause I went to a
yeah,
girls'
your
school.
girlfriend, yeah, and like that was like you talking about it because you just the way you phrased it sounded like but that was amazing.
I'm classically trained. I'm used to reading.
I am not.
I am not. If I can throw a third one in there, this is a point in time one, but
Okay.
the book Just Kids by Patti Smith, and it's
Just kids.
and
Okay.
it's a story about
Kids.
it is basically it's an autobiography, but it's about her and when she met the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe when she first moved to New York City, and
who is he?
he's a famous like New York photographer, and
Okay.
they were like in a relationship early on, but he's a famous for like one of the first photographers to represent kind of gay culture, and he's the
Oh, right,
gentleman
okay.
in that photo right there with the Tommy gun.
Okay.
Yeah,
She points to a picture above the camera.
with a young Robert Mapplethorpe holding a Tommy gun in front of an inverted pentangle.
Pentagram.
That too. And yeah, but it's the only book I had when I moved to Edinburgh.
Okay.
Like I left all my
Yeah.
stuff in storage, and so I just read it over and over again. And it was a really weird time in my life, but it's such a beautiful
Cool.
book, and it's about
It's not
basically not knowing what you're doing.
it's not the book specifically. It's tied into like a place and time as well. That
It's the book
makes-
as well, because
yeah.
I love Patti Smith. Like she's my idol, basically. But it's the combination of the two. Anyway, that's me.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yes, on to the last question.
Is the last question?
No, actually we have 2 more questions.
2 more questions? Oh, I have one for you too.
Okay, we have 3 more questions.
Mine's short.
We should probably make this last few short.
Cool.
We'll keep it
Mine's
quick.
a yes or no. So
Okay, not for this one. When and where do we need gendered spaces? Which one should we keep? Which one should we create? Which one should we dismantle? And that's from Scott Smith.
that's a good question. I think gendered bathrooms are dumb, and I think
Yeah.
it causes a lot of fuss, and it's unnecessary. Have individual cubicles.
When he sent me this question, I kind of sniggered. I was like, well, we say that we don't believe in like the bathrooms gendered.
Yeah.
Because it's stupid. Just have a bunch of stalls.
Yeah, exactly. That's totally solved. Yeah. I think we need them when people need them.
But is that to say that that's not happening now, or?
I think, they have things like, say, women's only gyms or whatever. And I can see a room for that.
Why?
If you want to join. Just like sometimes as a girl, you want to go to the gym without guys staring at your butt. Like that kind of thing.
But then would you wear something to accentuate those parts?
Well,
of your
you're going to wear
body?
something practical. You're at the gym.
Yeah,
You're going to
of
wear
course,
leggings.
Of course,
Like
yeah.
and I don't think the
I'm not
type
saying
of
that's why people stare at your butt, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying
so you're supposed to wear a parka to the gym. Like it doesn't make
Shorts.
sense, you know?
shorts.
Yeah. So then they stare at your boobs. Like it's whatever. Just it shouldn't. So that's an example of why the onus shouldn't be on you to keep men from doing
totally,
that.
Yeah.
And the way we
I was
live
playing
now.
devil's
No, I
advocate,
know. But the way we live now, that is what happens. And maybe you work somewhere all week. Like, let's say you're a bartender and you got guys hitting on you all the time and you want to go to the gym when you have a morning off and you don't want to do more of that. I can understand why you would want.
But the type of women we see at the gym and the ones that are Instagram famous and YouTube famous, they're basically wearing, I'm not saying, like you're saying, that's not, the onus is not on them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, what they're doing at the gym, they're doing stuff to specifically work a certain area of their body while, you know, and that's...
And if they're comfortable doing that in co-ed gyms, cool, awesome. Yeah. If they don't want to, they shouldn't have to.
I think gyms are, like, the coolest place for that, though.
Yeah?
Like, it's every gym I've been to, there's always been women there just doing their thing, and it's never been an issue.
I mean, it's never been an issue for you.
I think women are more scared to go to the gym under the pretense that it might be like that as opposed to it actually being that. And I think the type of women that go to women-only gyms are the women that are scared of that as opposed to women who have experienced it, you know.
I don't know how you could have any first-hand discussion of that, though. Like, because you're not a woman.
Of course.
So...
But the women have not... I'm saying that it's mostly people who don't go to co-ed gyms first and then go, oh, this is terrible, and then go to an all-women one. I think it's just people who are outright scared of that and go to that, you know.
But then if it would keep them from going to the gym if they were scared of it, shouldn't they have the option to go somewhere else?
Why not just work on their own sort of, you know, fears?
Again, I don't really see why it's on them. Like, well, it's not like they're coming out with this stuff from
sexuality,
nothing.
Though. I'm saying you can work on your own fears. Like, it's a fear that they have. Why not be able to sort of get past that?
Yeah, and I think if you're sick of that stuff in your life, it can be nice to have a space where you're not worried about it.
But then you could say that about anything, you know.
Yeah, but that's a good example because it's like you can't do that in the workplace. It's not practical.
You can't just assume something and then make a complaint about it. You have to experience it. Yeah,
but I don't think that women aren't experiencing that.
No, but like, I'm saying myself, I think it's women who, you know, like have not experienced it and went and just assumed that that's what it's like and go to all women gyms as opposed to go into a gym like that and experiencing someone ogling them or whatever.
But I mean, like, I get chatted up when I go to the grocery store. Like,
but the gym's a different place, though. Yeah. Like, everyone's there to work out, and it's just a different atmosphere. Like, I know you're not a big gym person.
No, but this isn't about me not going to the gym.
I go to the gym, and you haven't been to the gym. You know, that's the thing.
I've been to gyms ever, and I have friends who have been to the gym who have guys, and it's not all guys, of course, but they have one or two guys there, and they know if they're there that they're basically going to have to avoid them the whole time, and that's not cool. And it shouldn't, I don't think it should be, okay, we'll segregate it. But I think until people sort their shit out, that if you...
But that thing's going to happen regardless.
What do you mean?
Unless it's something that becomes like weird and really sort of like over the top and something physical happens, that's when obviously you have to like be like, this is terrible. Like, you have to do something about that.
I don't think it needs to go that far. I think if you're made to feel uncomfortable and somebody's doing something that's genuinely making you feel uncomfortable.
But you're going to have those uncomfortable interactions in life. Does that mean you then quit life, you know?
No, but it'd be nice to have one space where you don't have to worry about it.
But should a gym be that place?
Well, what else would be that place?
Not sure.
Yeah. So it's just an example of something that there'd be practical reasons that you could, and I'm not saying all gyms should be segregated or something mental like that. I'm saying it would be nice to have the option maybe in that setting. I
think it just creates more divide.
I don't mean like they already exist. I don't see that there is a huge issue caused by that.
Well, there is a big issue about it though. Like,
what is it?
Only female yoga as well. You know, all these type of classes. You know, only women's classes as well. That seems to be a thing for some people. Not me, but I'm just saying. Like,
so I don't see why it's a problem.
I think because of the way it's capitalized on by the business, it's seen as something like sometimes they get charged less to bring more women in.
Okay, so that's shitty, but that's capitalism being shitty. That's not women being sick of getting hit on shitty. Like, I know it sounds a bit silly, but it is actually completely exhausting sometimes, just like dealing with being a human person. And it would be nice to have that control feature for one thing you do in your life.
Yeah. That's life though, you know, like you're going to have exhausting, like life's exhausting in itself.
Yeah. But it's one thing you could have control over.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you?
I don't know. It's hard when it's not something that's a physical thing that's happening. That's, you know, it's tough to sort of judge. I can't judge it. You know, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be a woman and experience that.
Yeah.
You know, when it's not something that's happening physically, but I mean, it does go past that sometimes. I'm not denying that, obviously.
And again, I don't think it's the issues when I go that should be taken care of regardless of what setting you're in.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm not saying again that I think it's better to go to a co-ed or to go to a single sex gym. I think it's nice to have the choice, and maybe one in every 20, like whatever it is. But if you're spending your money to go somewhere, I think you as a consumer, since we do live in capitalism, unfortunately, it's cool if you have the power to choose where you're more comfortable. Yeah.
But you're not going to a gym to be comfortable.
Well, you're going to a gym to work on yourself, and it'd be nice if you could focus on yourself.
Well, that's what you should do.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not like you're not going there to be comfortable. Like you're going there to push yourself and stress.
No, I totally know that. But maybe you can push yourself better if you're not worried about like guys saying creepy things to you.
Yeah, saying something like if it's escalated from someone looking at you. I mean, saying something's
Oh
different.
yeah, no, and I don't mean just looking at you, like people look at each other. No, I mean like when guys won't leave you alone. Okay. And I've certainly heard that from friends at the gym.
I've never seen that in a gym. Like,
yeah, but you generally tend to go to pretty cool gyms, I think, as well. So, and I don't think you go to ones where there are necessarily a ton of women either, just the type of gyms they are. Yeah. And I think also like a fair bit of the stuff you do is in the kind of MMA like community, and those people, they all know each other and they're cool to each other, whereas like big urban gyms, people are just dicks. Yeah. So like I say, I think, and what I mean is if any space should be like gender, whatever, I think that would be a good example of one where there'd be reasons for it to be.
Me personally, I don't think so.
No?
I don't think a gym's a good place to have a gendered.
Would you think that there was another place that was good?
Well, what would be the difference between the bathrooms and a gym?
Well, I think with the bathrooms, it's always one or the other is the problem.
Would you not feel like you're in a more vulnerable position when you're in a bathroom and then someone then comes in who is male?
That, to me, that's, again, if we're in like wee little cubicle, like in the toilet caves, it doesn't make any difference. Like it's not. But
it's still like a thin door between you and potentially a male as well.
Yeah, but I mean,
as opposed to
there are always thin doors between us and strangers. Yeah. Like, again, it's the problem with toilets is it's always one or the other, and that's. If you want to opt into being in a same space, then you don't have that option. Yeah. Whereas with gyms, again, if you have a minority that are single sex, that's not infringing on anyone. Yeah. You can choose to go to that or not go to that. Whereas the bathrooms, you don't have a choice. And I don't like, I've heard all this apocryphal stuff from like crazy Republicans about, girls being assaulted in toilets. I've never heard anything like that. I've heard it just about everywhere else, to be honest.
Have you heard about any girls being assaulted in a gym?
Well, I've heard of girls being like groped and said creepy things to them and stuff like that at gyms. Yeah.
Where?
In Canada and in the UK.
So just people you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, again, like
groped how?
Like I don't want to get into people's stories. It's not really my business. But like guys trying to show them how to do stuff, but like touching like inappropriately when they haven't asked for help, like stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Scott, for that one. Last one, I think. Or second last one. Ewan Sloan, one of my old coaches up at Dundee MMA. He's asking, is intermittent fasting just a new fad? I like ketogenic.
Yeah. Well, you can do that without being keto, though, can't you?
No, I said I like.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, I thought you were explaining for people who hadn't heard of it.
Because they see ketogenic diet as a fad.
Yeah.
The thing is, these things exist at the same time. Fads exist at the same time as something being good as well.
Yeah, that's true for sure.
It's hard to sort of say. I mean, obviously, I think that people have jumped on the ketogenic bandwagon, but a lot of people have found it useful. You know, it's not just because a lot of people are doing something doesn't mean to say it's bad either.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's lots and lots of science around intermittent fasting to say it's beneficial. You know, people putting on muscle. You know, and it's sort of weird the way it works. If you read into it, and it sounds counterintuitive, but if you do 12 hours of fasting a day, and people take it up to 16 and 18, that can be beneficial for you, and people have had success with it. Same with the ketogenic diet. I find that one a bit more sort of less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less relenting. Like you have to keep with it for it to really, really have an effect.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm in a point in my life where I want to enjoy like a beer and a wine.
Yeah.
And that can knock you off it. So that's all I've got to say about that one.
Can I have an answer as well?
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So I think like the problem with ketogenic is you have to fully commit to it. Otherwise it's not going to be that effective for you and can actually really make you feel shit. So if you're doing it for a really specific goal, that's brilliant. And they've, used it therapeutically really well to treat different things. I think with intermittent fasting, like as long as you're not feeling shit or being crazy, it can't hurt. And you don't need to do it perfectly all the time for it to have an effect. And also it's probably a lot more like how we used to eat. Not that everything is good about how we used to eat, but I don't really see it. The other thing about it is it's not something that can be capitalized on. You can't sell people fasting. So I'm always kind of inclined to be more into something like that.
You can't sell someone a fasting
shake. Exactly. You can sell people ketones, but you can't sell people fasting. So that makes me think any research that's done into it is probably pretty legit. Yeah. And if you want to give it a try, you don't have to kind of put any capital into it. So. And
I think ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting has been practiced for a long time, in one way or another, through religion or not. It's just it's something that has been utilized for beneficial effects. Ewan goes on to ask, this is about the referendum, I guess. In hindsight, would Scotland be better off independent, and especially with the rise of the far right in England?
Briefly, yes. What do you think?
It's a no-brainer to that question, Like, I think we knew, whoever was voting yes knew that we were going to be better off independent, and I think it's only been cemented by the fact that there is a far right rising in England and in other places in the world as well. It seemed like we could have protected ourselves more from that, and become a bigger player on the world stage. So I think that's sort of all I can say about that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think in light of I think the only legit fears around independence were about our membership in the European Union, and now that's been pulled out from under us. So that was pretty much the only thing we had to lose, and now that's gone. And I know it's going to hit Scotland harder than it's going to hit England as well, even though it wasn't Scotland's choice. So, yup.
To the next part of his question, can we as a country, Scotland, find a way to deal with the drug problem? And should we go tough on drugs or look at it as an illness?
Portugal style, legalize everything and treat people.
Well, I think Scotland is actually trying to put forward that they should legalise all, strictly regulate, but legalise Class A drugs and other forms of drugs. And I think because we're still tied to Westminster said that we're not planning to reform the drug industry, because we have a bunch of test cases that have showed, in countries that when they legalise all drugs but control the substances in one way, but not criminalising people who are addicted. It has so much in the way of benefits for the country. Portugal is one of the cases. I think somewhere in South America did it. I can't remember.
Not sure.
I'm not sure. I'll just have a little look. And yes, obviously Scotland's trying to do this as well, but I think they're just getting the kibosh from Westminster.
So that's back to his other question there. Would we be better off?
Yeah.
Yes, we would. I think any system that leads to fewer people in prison and dead sounds like a pretty good system.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy in hindsight that we still are throwing people in jail just because they're addicted to something.
Yeah. And I think it's good to distinguish between legalizing something and decriminalizing something. I think I'm into decriminalizing everything and then legalizing marijuana.
just strictly controlling, and putting a lot of things on it. We're all adults, and people are going to be addicted regardless, and we should just give them the help they need, you know, and put them into rehab and help them somehow that way, as opposed to throwing them in jail. There's so many negative repercussions from throwing drug addicts into jail.
Exactly. Yeah. It's never a good solution at all.
No.
For anybody.
Exactly.
Not even for society. Like, it's not like it's keeping society, I don't know, safe or anything. It's usually just teaching people who already had low stake in society how to be criminals when they really weren't already. So,
criminal.
But the problem is it involves investing money and like care.
Yeah.
And
Tory
government's not going to do that. That's not their MO. So.
And it feels like the Tories have sort of are driving a wedge and making everyone suspicious.
Yeah.
And I think a policy that means that you have to look after the most vulnerable and your country is not on the high on the list for a lot of people who are fans of the Tories, and that's terrible. And I think it predominantly comes from England. And I'm not saying that in a way that's supposed to be like, I hate English people. I don't. It's not a thing for me. I've said this numerous times. I'm not a huge patriot of Scotland. I love Scotland. I'm not, and I'm not into nationalism either. So it doesn't bother me either way. But you can't avoid statistics, and the statistics say that it was England that mostly voted for the Tories,
And it's the government in Westminster who seems to have wanted to tacitly kill off all the most vulnerable people as opposed to supporting them. So,
and it's disappointing because Scotland obviously wants to evolve and become like a more progressive country, and we're getting shot down at every point from Westminster. We want to be a leading sort of Scandinavian type country, but we're not. And I think it comes from within as well as Westminster. We sabotage ourselves a lot.
That seems to be the case. Yeah, it's sad. I think some of it from Westminster as well feels vindictive, like it's like a punishment for having tried to,
of course,
and it.
Well, that's what happened.
They
hiked the oil prices up in Scotland. after we voted, we were going to have the vote. For it being so close.
Yeah. It's pretty disgusting, actually. Yeah.
Anyway, so thanks, Ewan, for that question. I think we should just about be wrapping it up there.
Yeah,
unless you have
we've
a
gone
question.
I had one for you, and this is from Hugh, who's another former podcast alumnus. And his question was, that promo photo of you with the sort of beefcake intellectual realness with your butt? He'd like a really big poster of that, if that's cool. Like really big. Is that all right?
Is that a question or is he begging?
It's a question, but he's really optimistic.
How about I just appear in his room with all that on and just look round at him seductively on his bed? But hey, Hugh.
He'll get back to you, I'm sure. Sounds good though. Might be even better than a poster. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was Hugh's question.
Thanks, Hugh, for that amazing question, I guess. Yes, have you got any more? Anything sort of
I think that's me. Yeah. We've had a good long one. This is probably my longest.
Almost 3 hours.
This is my first of those.
Wow.
Yeah.
It goes in a flash, especially with questions like this. And I want to thank everyone that sent their questions in. You've made this podcast awesome, and you're forever helping me continue to do this. Even if it's just mentally, I'm doing it for you guys. And your questions for this episode was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
I really enjoyed it as well. That was a really good idea for a format. I think it was brilliant. We got some really good questions. I had fun. Yeah, that was cool.
Just to sort of ask you, what was your favorite one and why?
Good question. I got really interested in the chronics one, but I don't think there's as much to talk about with that one just because it is so hypothetical. It's sort of like science or principle. And but I would say I really enjoyed the Norse one.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was really cool. I like my mom's warm-up ones as well, just because it was like
yeah.
And obviously I gotta have to shout out to my dad too. I think that was good. He knows what flavor of nerds we are. So yeah. Any others stand out for you?
For me, the one about Roseanne from John.
Yeah, that was a dark horse.
Because it was the first one I received.
Yeah.
And it was the most sort of funny one. And to Neil with the one on the obviously the Norse mythology and tying
Yeah.
into the sort of fitness one. That was a good one because
That was cool.
he's one of the very few people that I know that have sort of cottoned on to that.
Yeah.
I've seen it myself a little
Mhm.
bit, but I don't think they're intertwined. They're just parallelly rising together, I guess.
Yeah, it's a weird Venn diagram
Yeah.
of stuff.
Venn diagram.
Venn diagram. Yeah. But no, that was really cool.
Cool.
I like that we got a range of sort of little hors d'oeuvres and sort of bigger ones, and yeah.
Anyway, guys, I'm going to have to eat after a massive 3-hour
Yes.
podcast.
Hungry.
What should we get?
I'm kind of feeling
Food.
Chinese.
Chinese.
Maybe.
I was thinking Indian, but
Indian. I feel like we just had Indian. Well, we'll talk about this off air.
anyway, thanks to everyone that sent in their questions. This has been an amazing episode.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to regular podcast obviously next week. But I might make this biannual or
Biennial or one of the
something.
buys.
Yeah, one of them.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I would do that again.
Maybe more often because I enjoy interacting with people who
Mhm.
listen to the podcast. I always love hearing what they think and a viewpoint they've had from anything that we've said. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope you continue to watch and listen, and I will see you next time.
Just watch, don't listen. Weird.
Ciao.
Bye.